Hi, everybody. I might have to stop in a second because I have a kettle of water on for some tea. So I'm not sure exactly how long this is going to take. So I just welcome. Thanks. This is sort of a continuation on sort of what might be understood as a critique of the RFK Junior candidacy and the connections with Children's Health Defense. And I've been working for a while on, let me see, I'll show you, oh no, a big map that really I've been doing a deep dive because I kind of knew at the beginning that Children's Health Defense wasn't focused on the things that I was going to be focused on. So I didn't really pay that much attention, honestly, until this candidacy. And then at that point, it became more important for me to sort of jump in and figure out what was going on with it. So, I'm very intentional about my research. And I just want to be clear that this is really about looking at the system, looking at the structure. And yes, there are individuals involved, but I prefer to sort of, I think that there's a resistance to looking at the structure because it's so expansive and it touches really all of us, right? If not directly, within a few degrees of our friends or our family. And so, if I were to imagine the system as being embodied in some way, I think the system knows that we don't like to look at things that might make us examine people who are around us in a different light. Doesn't mean those are terrible people. It just means that we're all caught up, we're sleepwalking into this Web3 cybernetic thing. And because it's so big and because it's so close to all of us, and because we're so traumatized and things are so polarizing, when we point something out like a connection or a story, and it is someone in our sphere, or it is someone that we've projected our support for, the immediate response is sort of throw up a blockade, don't talk, how dare you say that about me or the person I'm connected to or what have you. And it really stops our ability to have the conversations about the system. Now, I've been saying for since the beginning for me of the lockdowns, that this isn't a small cabal. This is all of us caught up in these things, getting up, climbing out of bed every day, going to work, doing the things that are incrementally building the cybernetic game machine. And it doesn't mean we're bad people, but it means that we do actually have a responsibility once we start to realize what's going on, to start looking. And if we've looked at one part of the elephant really, really closely, we have to realize that we're just on one part and there are other parts. And so to actually navigate the landscape, we're going to have to understand it better, right? And those other parts, as we go exploring the different parts of the elephant, are going to touch on things that make us uncomfortable. And after so many years of being managed and being put in an uncomfortable situation, people are really loath. For the most part, the resistance is hunkered down into their core group that they're aligned with, and then they're just stuck there, right? And then they use that who you're hunkered down with as a polarity. Even within the resistance, there's these splits, right? And then they play one side off against each other. So I'm saying if you can get to a place of not being as emotionally invested in the person, this isn't about making people bad or making people evil. There's a lot of people in the resistance who have been doing that for a long time. I don't think it's particularly helpful. I think it's really going to stunt our ability to look at the system. So I can't remember if I already said this before, but I'm going to call this little discussion, the Camelot corner, because again, they move us through story, right? And it's clear that RFK Jr. is lifting up the Kennedy legacy. It is sort of the Camelot 2.0. That's the brand that he's wearing. And then incidentally, essentially Children's Health Defense is an extension of has become sort of an extension of his, the role that he's playing, that there's a synergy there and it matters. So I can hear my kettle water. I'll be right back. Here, I've got my kettle. So I just want to say that, I've been in correspondence with some people who are really triggered by the things that I say. And I think that their initial projection is that I must see the world in a terrible way. I must not be able to see the good in people. And I would say that's an inaccurate statement. Thanks. So I feel like my job is to look, like to look with a certain amount of distance and to try to withhold judgment. Now, I do get a little judgier when I explain to people and then they still never incorporate what I say into their analysis and they never are thoughtful and it just pretends like nothing has happened. I do get frustrated with that. But I think that some of us need to look without judgment so that we can examine more of the elephant. I feel like that's me. I feel like I'm not a negative person. I just want to do a little, I don't know if you guys can see how long this is. I'm going to maybe go back to the full camera here. Can you see my amazing dandelion? This is from, so I live in a row house in Philadelphia in this, I have a little tiny, it's not a back 40, it's maybe a back, maybe, I don't know, my backyard's probably 20 feet by 15 feet. And so I have like a little planting bed and I have some pots. And so these dandelions have been growing in one of my pots and they're the most beautiful, like long dandelions. So look, this stem, I don't know if you can see, it's like 2 feet tall. It's so amazing. So this dandelion isn't going to go to fluff. But I just want to emphasize, this is not about a personality. I'm not here to tear down institutions, but I am here to ask questions and to encourage us to take responsibility for when we see things and to not look away, because a lot of the things that are happening are due to the looking away part, that we're not willing to actually look and examine thoughtfully without judgment the system and then decide on a different path. So today I put together some stuff this morning. I have this whole map here. Let me show you. Let me go back to the, is that right? Transition? There we go. Okay. So this is my map that I've been working on. Again, I'm very thorough. I mean, you can't say that I'm not thorough. I've been going through all the 990s of Children's Health Defense. Before it was Children's Health Defense, it was actually called the Mercury Project up until like 2018 or 2019. Going through all the 990s, looking at the board. Yesterday, I went to the Free Library of Philadelphia. They have a foundation center. Actually, it's all just digital now. I think they must have like maybe retired the woman who ran the nonprofit center. But you can it's a subscription database. You have to go to the library to use it. But it's the foundation grants online. So I found like 41 grants. Again, I'll just restate that Children's Health Defense says that they don't share any information about their donors, which is an interesting position to take, being that the last time I checked in 2021, their 990 said they have a $16 million budget, which is pretty substantial and far beyond most nonprofits. So you can see here, I've been pulling together, these are the consultants that were listed on the 990s. I've been pulling together some of the donations, and I have to do another talk about these donor advised funds, because I think it's really sketchy that essentially Children's Health Defense is to tell people to give anonymously through these donor advised funds, which are a real problem. And when I went to the foundation center yesterday, they had several. Actually, somebody alerted me to the first one, and then I went and found the second one, Greater Horizons, which is a community foundation out of Kansas City, Missouri. And essentially what these are just big pots of money. You can just set up a foundation so you don't have to like bother with all of the legal filings. I mean, they do it for you. It's like a clearinghouse. And so you don't have to hire a staff, and they process things. I'm sure they take a fee. And then when the money comes out, essentially it's like writing something out of your checking account. You just say, I want to designate a certain amount to XYZ charity, and it goes to them. But the amazing thing is that when it goes out, it just says Greater Horizons. You don't know who of the many, many, many donor advised funds in Greater Horizons it goes to. So essentially it's like putting it in a black box. And that's what Children's Health Defense is doing officially on their website, is saying, give to us through a black box. And, there are people, especially who've long been in the sort of advocacy, around the issues with the mercury and the autism and all of that stuff. And they're like, oh, I totally understand why it needs to be like anonymous. But what I'm saying is, at this point, you have an organization that is running a $16 million budget that in February hired as the chief operating officer a former executive who had done the global innovation lead for Pfizer Consumer Healthcare And then after that, went on to be a long-time consultant to pharmaceutical and finance companies. And then at the first inkling of anybody asking like what that was about, they tried to scrub it off the internet, right? And so I would say, and then later, I could show you one of the other things that I've been looking at. Someone pointed out they have, I guess through Red Balloon, they're doing all of their hiring. And so you can go on to Red Balloon. I don't know if they've had this for very long, but I went through all of their job listings, and so I have all the hot links here, and I'll include the link to this so you guys can look it up. But since February, between February and early May, they've added 14 positions, which not every position had a salary, but I kind of lowballed what the salaries probably would be for the ones that were unlisted. And it's close to $1 million in staffing. And that's not including benefits. A lot of these jobs listed, health, dental, paid vacation, 403B, which is great. Like, I'm all about people getting the right benefits, but I just want to point out, as someone who has who worked for 17 years in a small local nonprofit, and this was small, meaning like we actually had a staff of about 15 people, so it wasn't just a teeny tiny one. It was, we were a significant historic landmark, and so by the time I left, our budget was near $1 million, but it took maybe 15 years to get from, like, when I started, it was probably half of that. It's very difficult to get general operating funding, and anybody who knows who works in the nonprofit space realizes that it's a challenge for a nonprofit. You to have general operating, which is the hardest money to raise and that covers salary, right? Like, so if you're going to hire people, you need general operating funds. Most of the funds are project based in grants. Like the major donors in Philadelphia, like we were getting money from the William Penn Foundation or these different foundations. They might give you a 3-year grant to do a specific project, and built into that project, like, for us, like river education or something, you could embed a portion of the staff's salary into the grant, but it was time limited, right? It was only for a certain number of years, and you weren't getting all of it covered. You'd have to get a match, which is why there's an emphasis on nonprofits to have an endowment, because if you have an endowment, then the interest off the endowment can be used for general operating. So it's quite a tightrope to walk for a nonprofit to grow and then bring on staff, because you want to be responsible for your staff, because you don't want to hire someone and then not have the money to pay them the next year, right? And so, these jobs, for people who are listening, I'll describe again. These are from mid-February to early May. A campaign manager. Now, this campaign manager, that was listed on May 5th, and the name of the campaign was Reform Pharma, right? So this is a person whose job will be to run the Reform Pharma campaign. Now, again, I think if we go back and we look at Children's Health Defense's mission statement, Reform Pharma is sort of a big concept, right? It's not it's not terribly actionable. Like, when my understanding is, when I looked at this organization initially, for the first 8 years or so of its operating from 2007, like really almost 10 years. So I think it started in 2008 and it changed its name to Children's Health Defense in 2018. But the first 10 years, it was called the Mercury Project. And the Mercury Project, it was this guy, Ed Gladden, and it was linked early on to a film that he released in 2014 called Trace Amounts. And he was someone who suffered neurological problems, and he believed it was from mercury poisoning. And so his focus was, again, he has the same frame as RFK Jr., not against injections. What I am against is mercury poisoning. And so that's actually a very specific actionable item, right? Like, remove mercury from the pharmaceutical industry. And that's actionable. Reform Pharma is pretty broad, and it's gotten huge, right? And so, like, I would say, even if you're someone who's giving, $50, $100 to the Children's Health Defense, you need to ask, like, what is the progress to goals? Like, are you a litigation organization? Are you an educational organization? Are you a grassroots activism organization? Right now, it feels like they're trying to be all of those. And build a media empire. So if you look, a lot of these jobs are around their digital brand and digital communications. So yeah, you have digital communications, to what end? Like, what is the goal? Is it to reform pharma? And that's something that if we go back and we listen to the interview with Andrew Peck that has since been scrubbed off Spotify and the Children's Health Defense TV channel, but I still have the clip. I mean, he says his goal is to reform pharma, right? So you've hired a former pharmaceutical guy who wants to reform pharma. You're hiring a campaign manager who wants to run the reform, is going to be tapped to run that campaign. Don't you think you want to know where did that $16 million come from? Because all of a sudden, this organization is really expanding its scope, and we don't know who's driving the bus, because that's the thing that's emphasized to me so often on this is that it's here. Let me see if I can get into the Reform Pharma campaign. This is important. And this is all on the Wayback Machine. So there's the campaign manager, and you can see here the Reform Pharma campaign, right? So that would be consistent with the Peck hire. When I have done all of the work that I've been doing since 2015, for the most part, 10 years, you look at the money. That the money tells you the story. You can look at a glossy brochure, and you can look at their annual report or whatever, their videos, but if you know who's giving them money, and then you know who else those organizations give money to, that tells you a lot. And so I'm just saying that it matters that Children's Health Defense is not that they say we don't do an annual report. I mean, how bold is it that you have a $16 million, operation and you don't do do you have a strategic plan that's available so that we know what this Reform Pharma program is about? Is it about personalized injections like Liz Mumper stuff? And you're running for president, right? They've got a candidate running for president. So that makes it even all the more important. It's not simply a matter of sticking to your mission for the purposes of maintaining your IRS charitable status. It's about the messaging that you're taking out into the community. So anyway, so I just wanted to start off with, because I've had a couple people say, well, oh my gosh, why are you picking on this guy? And I'm saying he's running for president. He's running for president for an organization that has a very broad mission that's broadening all the time, that they have lots and lots of people. Oh, I was going to, the other thing about the job listings, there's a lot about branding. So the article I'm going to talk about the environmental article, is from The Defender, which is their online digital publication program. Now, it's important to know that Children's Health Defense also now maintains a publishing subsidiary and a videoed subsidiary. So again, lots and lots of money going into building a brand around this organization. Among these are the jobs that are related to the digital branding. Senior copywriter, Unix, UI UX designer for the interface, a news editor, a graphic designer, a photo editor, a content and SEO coordinator, and that's all about optimization for search engines. So those are all related. And all of those job descriptions were very much about building a brand, a consistent brand, tracking data analytics. You can sort of see some of this. External communications, compelling readers to take action, collecting the digital assets that were used for all of the CHD TV and the Defender websites, locating the images. Oh, this is the SEO, measuring and growing web traffic, managing the tagging of content and search engines. Oh yeah, here it is. Digital graphic design strategy, navigation, storyboards, and analytics to predict user behavior. So, when we talk about the data economy, like the media that's being put out not only by the main operation of Children's Health Defense, but all the subsidiaries and then all of the affiliates, that's part of the data economy. That's also part of building out the digital twin system. So that's that. And I just want to mention too, the situation with Peck, and before I get started, it's just, I'd be interested if anybody who's watching now wants to chime in, were other people out there talking about Andrew Peck, the former Pfizer executive hire at Children's Health Defense, knowing all of the stable of influencers that are aligned with Children's Health Defense? Did any of those people pick up and go, yeah, that's a bit odd. Why would they hire a guy with this particular background to do this work? And again, I was in touch with the head of the Pennsylvania chapter of Children's Health Defense in Philadelphia, who said, well, I don't know. Peck might be a good thing, might not. I don't know. It's hard to say. right? So even within internally, they're not saying that was an issue. Should we be talking about it? Should we be asking what the rationale was? Maybe they would say, well, our rationale is that we're going to be running a reform pharma campaign. So we want a Pharma Insider as part of that, as our reform effort. Okay, well then tell us that, right? Don't just shuffle it off to the side. So I will mention let's see, here's just a couple comments that have come up. This person was a sock puppet account. There's nothing on this account. It's a reply to the PEC presentation. I am baffled as to why it is a bad thing that Children's Health Defense has expanded its capacity to educate through media. I wouldn't call it a media empire by any stretch. Now, again, they have a subsidiary outlet of publishing and video and ongoing daily media. It's a media outlet. Really, it's a media outlet at this point with some litigation. I wouldn't call it a media empire by any stretch. And even if it were, how is it bad to get these true experts more reach so as to educate and promote children's health as well as adults? Your negative spin seems gratuitous. Now, I would say, too, the true experts. Now, we know that sort of raging out there is the whole discussion versus the bioweapon versus more terrain theory, right? Which true experts are you talking about? Now, for the most part, Children's Health Defense is more closely aligned with the bioweapon narrative because they're banking on needing these repurposed drugs, early treatment protocols, right? So they need the bioweapon narrative. But which experts? There's not one particular set of experts. And then two, it is building a message. And so it's important for me, in my mind, what Children's Health Defense is going to be an extension of this campaign. Now, I don't know what firewalls they need to put in place to legally stay on the right side of the tracks, but they're going to frame their message in alignment with their candidate, right? And so part of what I'm going to be talking about with the environmentalism is that they need to start rebuilding environmentalist climate warrior Bobby to mesh with health freedom warrior Bobby. They need to bring those two together. And so today I'm going to be talking about, it looks like it's going to be this green pill Web3 framing. So their litigation around, censorship and protecting their brand has to be understood within a political construct because it is. And then, okay, so that's that. And then someone else said, well, I'm a little confused. We don't like him because his nonprofit started making money after a decade of making minimal. I love your work and what you've accomplished. Let's see. But I've also been long been an RFK Jr. dreamer, and I'm not delusional to think that anyone is corruption proof. Donor transparency is important. Disappointed they didn't release this info, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just jaded at this point in history and making less judgment when everywhere I look is far more criminal. And so essentially what they're saying is like, what is it? Like you take the least worst or something like that. And it's not about them making money. I mean, on the one hand, it's like they're not earning money. I mean, there's a tiny bit that's maybe their membership fees and merchandise. They're funneling money from somewhere. Someone has opened a tap that is paying for this almost, potentially $1 million in new salaries. And that's an ongoing commitment because you're not going to hire somebody like a controller of your organization for 1 year and then drop them off because somebody's turned off the tap. So I want to know who turned on the tap, who's pouring money into the tap, because that's going to tell me a bit more about what Children's Health Defense is actually up to. And again, it's not sour grapes, but all of this has to be understood as cognitive domain management, right? Cognitive domain management. So how are we being managed? And for me, I don't appreciate being managed to say, don't worry your little head. We just don't do annual reports, but just trust us. We've got people who all understand they're on Team Bobby and we're the right team for the health freedom team. And so join our movement and don't little piss on our fire, which is again, something somebody told me, right? Don't come piss on the cooking fire of because people love this guy. Well, yeah, it does not occur to you that he's set up to be that character, right? So, follow the money, people, follow the money. And if they're not going to tell you where the money, and follow the money, particularly within the following of the PEC. The fact that the whole PEC thing unfolded and then they tried to scrub it tells me a lot. And so why were people not talking about it? Well, it's interesting because David Sentner has ties to Wharton. He's on the board of Children's Health Defense with his wife Layla, who run the school there in Miami, where Bobby's going later this month to join the Bitcoin crowd. And what does David do? Well, he does online reputation management. All right, and they've rebranded as Erase. Let's combat the negative. Well, just erase it. Is your online reputation keeping you up at night? And here's this guy, Alexander Kurian. Honored to be mentioned in David Sentner Enterprises press release. I look forward to guaranteed removals next chapter at Erase. David Sentner Enterprises announced new acquisition of negative content management leader, guaranteed removals, right? So, I don't know if there's any like pro bono stuff going on over there between the Sentners on their erasing, problematic things like finding out that your COO used to work for the same people you're supposedly, opposing. But here's a picture of Mr. Sentner. Enterprise level negative content management promises to be a hyper growth industry, and our first mover advantage and proprietary solutions should make this a fascinating journey for the team, said David Sentner, chairman of Erase.com. We started looking at this company mid-2019, right before all hell broke loose, right? We were so impressed. The founders did a spectacular job getting the company to this point, and we're excited to take the reins, right? Okay, so we've got David, who's very, very good at the erasure. And guess what? So so Erase.com operates out of offices in Miami, Florida, and Burlington, Ohio. And so I'm sorry, not Ohio, Burlington, Ontario. So anybody who are Canadians who are watching, let me see. But yeah, so they knew that they were going to work on reputation management, right? And so again, it's going to be a tricky thing to bring together the health freedom Bobby with the environmentalist Bobby. But I think that that's going to come through blockchain tokenization. And I think that's why since the very, very beginning, with all the pop-up of the freedom cells and me pushing back on John Bush and Derek Brose about the blockchain, and I'm like, you don't need blockchain for a freedom cell. Like, are you going to be transacting digital global trade? No, like you can totally have your own local community. You don't need it on blockchain. But ultimately, blockchain and Web3 tokenomics and the commons is going to be what is going to usher in this next phase of cybernetics. And my deep fear is that Bobby has been set up as this archetypal character to bring together these two things and say, wow, wait a minute, we can have environmentalism plus free markets. And we can fight the behemoths like Google with our token engineering and our local currencies, right? And then you've got Catherine Austin Fitts coming in on that. So, I've seen this coming like for a very long time. And I get up on the podium and I'm saying, understand Web3. Understand the protocol layer, understand smart contracts, understand impact finance, right? Understand all of these things, or we're going to be herded into a digital box canyon. And I feel like that's, And someone said the toll collection. So that's where he made his big money, is in automated tolls, which I think are somehow related to the rental car business. And Layla worked with him on that for a while. But if you think about the work, like symbolically, again, if we think about this in terms of archetypes, you've got the river keeper, and then you've got the toll keeper. And it made me think of, and I talked about the water programming, right? And then we've got tolls. And I was thinking, the Greek mythology, right? The Hades, the Chiron, Chiron, the toll, the boatman, right? The ferryman that take you across the river to the other side, right? So anyway, I think that's all kind of interesting to think about. But yeah, so no one wants to talk about impact investing. And a little bit later, I'm going to talk a little bit about Leland Lerman. I might do this on another visit, but I'm just going to say, everyone keeps saying, Allison, it's not time to talk about impact finance, right? Nobody really understands what you're talking about, Allison, and it's not time, and the bullets are flying, and we have to protect the health freedom, and we have to do the thing, and maybe later. And it's too complicated, by the way. We just don't even know what you're talking about. And what I want to say is, like, there are people who have been key individuals in the impact finance space, Leland among them. And in the fall of 2020, I was invited up to give a presentation to a group of people primarily aligned with like the anthroposophy group in upstate New York on the Hudson, And it was at this roundhouse. And a lot of these events have been held there. And I think New York organizing is really important to Children's Health Defense. I went a second time, and it was actually a meeting that was coordinating on litigation with Mary Holland. So they're very well, this isn't an outside individual. And I'm not saying this is a bad guy. Like, I'm not here saying, like, let me point a finger. But I'm saying if people want to tell me that there's not time to understand social impact finance, what I would say back is that there are key figures in certain aspects of linked to Children's Health Defense and linked to organizing around health freedom and the campaign who very much were in on the ground floor of this. And Leland is one of them. Again, really nice guy. And when I was, again, I appreciate the hospitality people showed me. This is from the talk. It was, I think it's up to 29,000 views from 2 years ago. It was in early November of 2020. I specifically described the whole pay for success model. Like, this is one of the slides that I presented. They filmed it. It's great. Like, we've shared it around. It was educating people. But I was pretty shocked when I started thinking, like, today, like, okay, so I need to really legitimize that there are people around RFK Jr. Who understand green finance. And it turns out that Leland, who literally were sitting in more informal talk the next day after the big presentation, and I'm in a room, and like Tom Cowan is there, and I've never, hadn't met Tom Cowan before, and I knew he was sort of known, and I was trying to explain to Tom, because he was a doctor, about how this would all interface with healthcare, blockchain health records, and eventually single payer Medicaid would go into having a health voucher, because they're going to want the data off of the alternative therapies too. And I've talked about that with Sergi, and that's going to all be connected to a choice model with the data, and that it would be part of the cybernetic impact, right? Like, they would be betting on well-being, that the marathon here is the well-being management in the cybernetic game. They needed the very harsh lockdowns at the beginning to trigger that, but the marathon is wellness, including alternative wellness. And so, it turns out when I was looking at Leland's work that he actually had a set of slide decks from 10 years ago that were promoting essentially integrative health and data collection for like organized health companies. Gosh, I have a lot on Leland. Here it is. It's the CFO playbook of healthcare cost management. But they need the data to be collected to show what works, that you're paying for what works. And this is all what works government. And then they're talking about the current system being dysfunctional, which I would agree, and that they want to create incentives to have a better system that includes integrated medicine, which a lot of that he talks about later is alternative treatments. And but it's all about the data. So mind and body medicine, including hypnosis, meditation, prayer, but they want to collect the data to build the incentives markets. And so, Leland in 2012 is already talking about integrative medicine, linking outcomes data and cost effectiveness. And that's everything that's going to be going on Web3 blockchain. And, I felt really dumb in retrospect when I finally, started looking into this a couple days ago. I mean, it turns out, I'm going to have a deeper dive on Leland later, but he was actually at a conference pitching like Sustainatopia green impact bonds in 2016. So this is the conference, and you can see at Sustainatopia, these are the codings on the event. Ecosystem of impact, clean tech and water. Now remember, clean tech and water is what RFK Jr. is about. Smart cities, resilience and community, sustainable strategies, lifestyles and health sustainability, and millennials. So those were all of the conference topics. And then, this is 2019 in Miami of all places. So here's Leland with Fund Balance on the panel launching the Impact Investing Fund. But before that, in 2016, he had been on literally Bonds 2.0, latest strategies for social impact and green bonds, Leland Lehrman, Fund Balance. And so, I just, and I'm sure that the person who invited me, and Leland also does work with David Martin, they're partners. Here you can see here, it's talking about, work advising major clients like Credit Suisse, drafting legislation around public investment policy, social-based values investments, and as a partner with Fund Balance, clients included Credit Suisse and MCAM. And MCAM is David Martin's investment firm, and he's also an impact investor. So, I felt foolish. I felt foolish, like bringing my little like homespun slide about, broken people being the raw material of outcomes-based contracts for what works government. And trying to explain it at the presentation that night, trying to explain it to Tom Cowan and a group of people. And the only reason I knew to look up Leland is like next to me, he was sitting next to me. And at one point he said, I'm an impact investor, but like they're the good kind, right? But he never once came up to me the 2 times that I met him to say, Allison, it's interesting the way you're talking about that, because actually I was working on that up until last year. And can you tell me how this is linked to like derivatives markets and digital identity and blockchain? Could you tell me? Because my goal is really to help the world and to be better and to use money and capitalism to help the world. And but he didn't ever say any of those things. And in fact, later on, he tried to connect me with David Martin, and I was like, no, I don't think so. And then he connected me with Kevin Jenkins, which at the time, because I knew that these systems were going to disproportionately affect Black and brown communities. And, and Kevin, my understanding is like he was a community development specialist in Newark, New Jersey, which was where a lot of the impact investments were targeted. And I thought that Kevin understood what I was saying. And in fact, at one point, he's like, can you write a letter about this, like that I can share? And I did. And it was right before Christmas of 2020. And I wrote this really heartfelt piece about impact finance in Black America. And then essentially he never did anything with it. And then he eventually passed it off to Sasha Stone, and he got me tangled up in this weird interview with Sasha Stone, which is not at all, I didn't know Sasha Stone was involved in any of that. And so I felt like that was just part of trying to like get me entangled in things. But this narrative that we can't talk about social impact finance because it's too hard or it's not time or nobody understands, that's not true. Because there are people who are very close to children's health defense, at least one individual among others, that do know what this is about. And this is the time, because right now this is all going to be pulling out, not just in the human capital, but in the natural capital, which is what Leo has been focused on. So, anyway, just back to like hiding things in plain sight. Like, remember, we've got David Sentner, erase.com, right? How convenient. Bobby can tap on his permanent, like automatic erasure group, whenever he needs it, to bring these two sides of his archetype together. But so this person, Sage Hannah, that I understand is kind of maybe someone who their brand is, poking the hornet's nest about like hero worship. There's a woman that I know, Laura, from the education space, and she said, well, would you like for me to promote this on my Substack? And hers is sort of just a little Substack. She just had started it. And I'm like, sure, that's nice. And she wrote a very nice thing, but ultimately it was about me as a person and less about Andrew Peck. And it included a link to my thing, which is great, but very few people moved to the next link. And I will say this as someone who was involved in, I was a membership person for Public Garden. The more click-throughs you have to do, the more people you lose. So if people needed to click through to read my article, most people weren't going to click through to actually link to what I said. And in Laura's Substack, there were fewer comments, but none of them were really about Peck. Michael Yaden chimed in, and then it was all about Michael Yaden. So that was one way. And then she passed it along to this person, Sage Hannah, who again is supposed to be the person who skewers the hero worship side of things, right? And so this is how it laid out. And I feel like, and again, I don't know that this person did it on purpose, but I think in understanding cognitive domain management, we need to know how it actually happens, right? So how do you hide something in plain view, right? So I go and clearly I have my own little YouTube channel. None of the influencers are going to retweet me, even though I have, I give links to all the original sources, and I don't claim that you have to do this to give me credit. And I did have someone on the YouTube who was poking me like, come on my channel and talk about this. And I'm like, I don't do interviews anymore. I've been burned too many times with interviews. But here are all of the original sources. You talk about it. I need more people to actually dive in and do their own research and talk. I've done a lot of it already for you here. And then this person got into my private emails and was really prickly and ugly. And I'm like, no. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. So there are very few people who are willing to actually do the work and do their own. They'd rather just have an easy crib, like just come on my show and promote me. Or if you're in the outsider group, they're not going to promote you. But so Sage Hannah picked up Laura's Substack. And again, now it's 3 times removed. So it's on Sage's, of Laura's, of mine. So I'm like buried three layers down. And so she put that he, I don't know who this person is, if it's a single person or a group of people. But it has the link, and then underneath, so Laura's title of her piece was, "Do you know who Andrew Peck is and why Children's Health Defense Fund would have hired him as its COO? You should at least ask some questions." And then she goes into the article. So underneath Sage Hannah, this is the first line of this there are multiple pieces in this post. Now, some of these posts for Sage Hannah, they're clearly meant to be emotional triggers. So it'll be a short little snip and a pithy comment and like, so what do you think, folks? And then the frenzied Substack goes blah, 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 and they do all of that, right? But this one, it's called Today in Band-Aid Rippers. So it's supposed to be like, here's some things to get you thinking, and they're going to be uncomfortable, right? But under Laura's post about Andrew Peck, it says, and this is Sage Hannah, friendly reminder that these are all caps optional content sources of research, and one can choose to click and read or not. No one is coming to your house to force you to click your links and make you read them. All right. So she leads with it. And at the end, if you're going to click through, you lead with the thing you want to forget. It's kind of like in the job interview. You'd rather be the last one interviewed than the first one. So this gets lead. It literally says, no one's making you click this link, which is fascinating. And then Sage Hannah goes on to, there are a couple other little links that you could click on. And then a whole pull-out quote from Derek Bros, highlighting Derek Bros on the Rockefeller Foundation, a post he made on April 28th, 2023. Rockefeller Foundation's new focus on climate change signals the next phase of the Great Reset. Now, again, if you know me, you'll know that I was writing about the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Rockefellers and climate in March of 2020. This is not new news, but all of the other ones just got a little brief reference, and then this is where they got the real estate, right? So as much as Sage Hannah might be poking the heroes, she's definitely centering the heroes folks. And then in this, there were, at the time I last checked, 194 comments. Not a single one of these comments was about Andrew Peck. Not a single one. I mean, it's kind of... I'll just, oh, sorry, let me see. Let me just click through that so you can see it. So this is the thing. So here I am up here. Remember, you don't have to read this, remember? And then it goes on. So here's the long piece from Derek Bros. So see, here's my little piece up here. You don't have to read it. Here's the long piece by Derek Bros, again, about Rockefellers. Nothing new there. Nothing new about, and this person had written about Rockefellers. So they're like, oh, here's some more about Rockefellers. We're probably not going to tell you about Michael Bloomberg or Pierre Omidyar. Here's some more things about Robert Malone, because I guess that's somebody that they poke a lot. So here's that. And then it closes with a pithy thing. Real whistleblowers who mess with the monster don't get 2 bottled waters in a fawning NYT interview. And so then now we're up to 200. And then the first comment is, let me tell you about whistleblowers and water bottles, right? There's nothing to this, right? This is targeting people. And maybe this is why people get so upset about and defensive, is that they think I'm also just targeting people like that. I'm not. I'm looking at the system. And yeah, there's people that are fronting the system, but it's not about that. So I just want to say, of those 200 comments, nobody talked about Andrew Peck. So you could hide it in plain view, and we allow it to be hidden in plain view. So I just want to emphasize that. So, okay. So this article was brought to my attention this morning. This guy, W. Aaron Van Diver. Now, I can tell you, having spent the last couple days listing all of these job postings for Children's Health Defense, that they're very protective of their brand identity and their news, and they put a lot of care into the headlines and into the photos. So you can see like the photo they picked is a waving flag over grass and yay America. Like, we don't want fascist totalitarian environmentalism. We want some good free market investment freedom environmentalism, right? And so that's what it's going to be set up to be. And in addition to Leland, I just want to point out over here, I was not aware until, let me see, about that Robert F. Kennedy was brothers-in-law with Andrew Cuomo for a while. So he was married to Caroline Kennedy. It wasn't, I guess, a very happy marriage, and the marriage broke off in 2005, I think. And this is a Vanity Fair article called "The Fall of Cuomo-Lot Inside the Ill-Fated Kennedy-Cuomo Marriage." But that's something I think that guy Fox Green brought out, and it was important to note. But then in 2010, this is 5 years later here, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is joining Governor-elect Andrew Cuomo's transition team. So, hey, no hard feelings in the environmental the environmental movement. We're moving on, right? And so that's how it goes. So definitely, they were close. They would know each other. They're definitely connected. And let's see, just pointing out that Andrew Cuomo, he announced the first social impact bond in 2014. So 4 years later, the first state and local-led social investment or pay for success bond in the country. Now, Kennedy, he's in California now, and the California ties are really important, but he's a New Yorker, right? So he moves in the circles of people who would know this. And these impact bonds were always going to be green. So that the green bonds were for the natural capital, and the human impact bonds were for the social impact stuff was more for the human capital. But if he was good at his job, which I'm presuming he was at Natural Resources Defense Council, he would have known this, right? He would have known what was coming. And then here we've got Cuomo in the Christian Science Monitor. Do good investing gets White House boost and $1.5 billion in private pledges. And then we've got Cuomo right on the cover. So New York was the lead in deploying impact finance. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., assuming again that he was good at his job as a riverkeeper at NRDC, he would have known that. And and then we've got, this is an event in, I think it's 2008. This is 2008. Again, the last economic crash happens, and then they set up the impact finance era. And it is at April 1st, April Fool's Day. That's cute. Robert F. Kennedy, Christine Quinn, and Mayor Michael Bloomberg attend NRDC's 10th annual Forces of Nature Gala, honoring Mayor Michael Bloomberg and Bank of America for environmental leadership at Cipriani 42nd Street on April 1st, 2008 in New York. And so there's a picture of the three of them together. And again, he was the lead attorney at Natural Resources Defense Council for 20 years. And here's a couple of other gala pictures, with various notables, and you see the NRDC logo behind. So he was in the circles of people who would have known about impact bonds. This is the Bank of America press release for that event. Again, CEO Kenneth D. DeLewis will be recognized by one of the country's leading environmental organizations for his guidance of the company's efforts to address climate change. The Natural Resources Defense Council will honor Lewis and the New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg at his Plan NYC initiative at its 10th annual gala this evening. So that matters. And what really matters, too, is that Michael Bloomberg brought social impact bonds to the United States from England, from Ronald Cohen. He was reappointed as the United Nations Climate Envoy in 2021. So again, directly connected to the UN SDGs. He was also served as the World Health Organization Global Ambassador for Non-Communicable Diseases and Injuries. So all the chronic illness that Bobby keeps talking about, diabetes, asthma, issues of obesity. Yep, that would be Michael Bloomberg. Yeah, Mikey and Bobby probably have some big plans set up. So he would know, or he would not be a professional good at his job if he didn't know about the social impact bond space in New York. Here we've got 2012, New York City, Michael Bloomberg announced a contract for the nation's first social impact bond, an innovative way to fund promising new programs at no cost. And all of these impact bonds are going to be connected with Web3. And so when we talk about the environmental aspect, the natural capital is really what Leo Saraceno has been focused on for so long. And it's coming together, I think, I'm just going to take a second to talk about, okay, so here are some tweets from Bobby recently. This is April 19th. And to me, this shows that he is moving into impact finance. This is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., April 19th, 2023. Quote, "We don't have fair market capitalism. We have corporate crony capitalism, where the rules are written by billionaires and incumbents and large corporations to stack the deck against the middle class." And then we have the government should create rules that make America able to do well for themselves by doing good by each other. Now, let me just repeat that. Government, and this is a follow-up to the previous tweet, government should create rules that make Americans able to do well for themselves by doing good by each other, instead of forcing Americans to do well by poisoning each other and hurting each other and privatizing the commons. Okay, so I want to point out this is really important that he's framing things as the commons, because what I keep saying with the scandals over crypto is that it's going to swing back and they're going to say, look at the greedy libertarians. It's just a tool. Let's take it to preserve and protect the commons. And what will happen if we accept that offer will be that we will enter into a cybernetic game board run by AI hedge fund portfolios, straight up. And so this doing well, that's going to be the chronic illness, but that's all metrics. So remember, I was pointing out on Leland's slide deck, integrative medicine is great. We just need to measure outcomes and create the right incentive structures. That's all run on data, and a lot of that data is going to be telehealth and wearables, okay? So the government should create the rules, right? So again, what I've been saying and why I'm so concerned about this $16 million quote unquote nonprofit is that this whole program is a public-private partnership that melds nonprofits, academia, government, and the private sector. So the government is the facilitator that provides access to the citizens. The government gives you the digital identity. The government brands its domesticated livestock. The government creates the investment opportunity for the quote unquote free market, right? This is all running in the human capital space through social welfare systems. And that's where the nonprofits come in. And they're the ones who will be tasked with collecting all of the impact data. And again, the impact data runs into the AI machine learning systems. So I think very clearly Bobby knows what's on. He is transitioning. He is pivoting into the next phase. And let's see. I do want to point out, again, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later, about the DAFs and this idea. Someone said to me when I sent out the last live about children's self-defense, but we have a platinum seal from GuideStar, and I have like the seal here. Let me tell you, it's all self-reporting. If you actually look at their GuideStar stuff, it's pretty sketch. I'll point out on their own rating system here. So you can see that their budget that they offer is 2018, where the budget is just $1.1 million. Now last I can see on 2021, it's 16 million, right? So they have dated information, but look, their board list is up to date. Well, as up to date as of last summer, including Tarina Eisner. And if you look, I would invite you to go to the Children's Health Defense board page. It only lists 4 people. It lists Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That's interesting. It lists Mary Holland. It lists Stacy Early or Ely, and she's not on here. And it lists Brian Hooker. So those are the only 4. All the other people are not even on their own blog post. So they have out-of-date financials that are misrepresentative. Their board list isn't concurrent with what's on their website. And then they also, because to get the platinum, you have to talk about your impact, right? And the impact is the goals and strategy, and they list their sustainable development goals. So this is a screenshot from the GuideStar. And I asked this person, I'm like, hey, did you happen to notice that their sustainable development goals are listed and they've got 6 out of the 17? Like, how amazing. They've got good health and well-being. So there you go. That's going to be, doing well for doing others. The government provides access to you so investors can manage your well-being. Clean water and sanitation. And, that's important because he's the water guy, right? Decent work and economic growth, responsible consumption and production, climate action, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. So Children's Health Defense is claiming 6 out of the 17 sustainable development goals, like straight up. And this is the cybernetic board game. And so this is why we have to make it about China and everything else. And make it about the World Economic Forum, even though, honestly, the World Economic Forum and the UN are, wedded at the hip, so to speak. So, I'll just emphasize, this is from that lovely poem about the once and future thing. This is how it works. You create the problems to offer the solution, right? This is from the poem that Meandering Myrmidon said. Let us now praise famous men. May their interest forever accrue. We'll accept all colors and proclivities. We can tokenize them too. This is what is coming. In our liberated markets, everyone will have their share. On this side, we'll make solutions and we'll make problems over there. That's the UN SDG program. With tokenized revolutions, we'll spin them round and round, and the energy they generate will power the cities and the towns. And so that's what we're talking about, is the tokenization. And, I am actually pretty frustrated over all of this, because I've been saying since the beginning about the corporate environmental movement, right? That there's problems, but that what's coming, because I knew it was all of the sustainable development goals, it was natural life on the planet, not just humans, all natural life, right? And so much of the health freedom movement was so anthropocentric, they could not step back and see how it's going to fit into the bigger picture. And I was consistently advocating around nature, right? Highlighting the importance of the farmers' protests in India to be able to control their own agricultural interests, as opposed to the Matthew Arrett, who's bring on Green Revolution 2.0 and Web3 technologies. Because I knew that nature was important, but look, so this is going to be the pivot. How do we're really upset with leftist climate activists who are so authoritarian, but we know sustainability is important, and we want to bring it back together. So, and let me see, I pulled this tweet. Occasionally I'll go and I'll check on my name and wrench in the gears on Twitter just to see if anybody remembers that I'm out there. And on this one, it's a Caitlin Johnstone tweet from earlier, or yesterday maybe, about Musk hiring somebody from the World Economic Forum. And then she goes on, it's just capitalist class solidarity. It's one of the many, many ways in which the capitalist class organizes and coordinates to advance their own interests. And then someone did mention my work, saying, you can look more. It's not just about the capitalist class. And this is the Hegelian dialectic, right? You've got the maybe progressive, socialist, communist, whatever leaning. Then you've got the capitalist class, and they're working at opposite ends of each other. And I know, for a while, I got, a fair amount of interest from the people who are following Cory Morningstar, and definitely Cory identifies as more left. I used to identify as more left before I understood the polarity aspect. I still identify more with prioritizing an indigenous worldview of right relationships and being a good relative and in balance with the world. So in that, I still align with Cory's outlook on the centrality of indigeneity. Although I will say, most of these organizations have appointed people that fit those different indigenous traditions and are uplifting them for certain purposes to advance things like rights of nature on blockchain. But if we fall into that it's just the capitalists, then we're not going to understand the tokenized commons. We're not going to understand this push that, we're not going to do the capital. We're so worried about the capitalists that we're going to do something else. We're going to do the commons. And then meanwhile, the capitalists are like, well, we're afraid of the progressives, but maybe if we can make it an investment market, it will work. So I think I'm going to just read through this a little bit, this article, and with some commentary. And then I have a whole lot more to be said after that about W. Aaron Van Diver. Now, I will point out, and I have some slides further on, that when I looked up the author, W. Aaron Van Diver, he's an author. He writes about poaching and wildlife protection. He lives in Colorado, which is the Bitcoin blockchain state of digital government. And he formerly was a high-ranking attorney in international law firms and worked for the United States government, right? So, and I don't know how old the picture makes him look, probably younger than me. So if he had took an early retirement and moved to outside of Aspen, Colorado, like a half an hour from Aspen. So this has to be understood that it turns out he works, supposedly he and his wife are involved with this wildlife conservation group that's based in Aspen, Colorado. And that's the Aspen Institute, which is sort of a central neoliberal think tank that's pushing all of the stuff, impact finance, cybernetics, social impact investing, the works. So I'll start to read this article. Can we reboot the environmental movement so it protects freedom too? In a deeply divided country, there are yet signs that a new left-right coalition can come together to take on the big global corporations that have captured government at the expense of ordinary people's freedoms and health of the planet. And I would say, on the surface, I love that idea. Although I think if you frame it as a left-right coalition, you're still framing things as left-right. You're still leaving the polarity in place. I think that the left-right dynamic is just used as a tool to keep people opposed to each other until you bring the synthesis. So this is the Hegelian synthesis. And I think that this is a transpartisan movement. And, I'm actually kind of concerned about like Bobby showing up at the Bitcoin conference in Miami and like the synergy that he may have with DeSantis. Because I'm concerned, like everybody else might think it's great that he gets the position. I think that they create the problem to give you the solution. And I'm very concerned, given the tendency of what I'm seeing come out through the narratives around him, that what he would bring in would be a free market Web3 program that we could all be energy entrepreneurs and tokenize every asset in the world to be part of a crypto game. And including the children, right? And we would say that it's in the name of having free choice and free will with a digital wallet. And that's not my movement. I mean, a lot of people are like, how dare you say anything about the movement? And I'm like, that's not my movement. That's not what I was about. I've always been against blockchain and impact investing and more recently cybernetics and the ant computer. So I'm not a fan. And I understand that people are fans. There are people who still maybe believe that they can vote their way out of this global transition towards the noosphere. I would say good luck with that. I don't know. I'm not a nihilist. I'm still trying to figure stuff out, but I want to know what's actually happening. So this idea of a left-right coalition coming together around the investing in the environment is very, very worrisome to me. Although I do agree that there are terrible environmental problems. This author is going to ask us to take at face value the climate science as well, because all of these markets, the vast majority currently are built on carbon trading, and then they're later on building biodiversity because they want to get all of the genomic sequencing and data analytics around all of the living things on the earth, as part of Microsoft's planetary computer. So the government will provide the access to people and nature for this tokenization. Okay, so going back to the article. Quote, polls consistently show that American people and people around the world are deeply divided on the biggest issues of the day, COVID-19, climate change, and more. Backlash against the COVID-19 fiasco of the last 3 years is building among a public that is slowly waking up to the unprecedented power grab and wealth transfer that took place under the cover of a pandemic. So I will say, if you're waking up to the power grab that has been done, you should actually pay attention to the $16 million, right? If you understand that this wealth transfer was happening among the most elite class of people who are advancing Web3 and crypto, you should be concerned that Children's Health Defense promotes crypto donations and running money through a donor advised fund so no one can find out who gave you the money, right? Now, no one should be above these questions, and if you don't have anything to hide, you would make your annual report available. So I would say, like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Like, just wake up to that. Okay, let's see. Okay, so the environmental left, again, they're posing the left-right because they need the synthesis, the Hegelian, the synthesis, is deeply worried about climate change. But the backlash against climate policy is building. right? So they're framing it as climate change. Again, this article has to be understood within the paradigm of climate science. And again, if you look through Children's Health Defense website, they're always emphasizing evidence, science, 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 science. They're not questioning the science. They just want to put their scientists in charge. The people who are, giving the $16 million want their scientists in charge. But they're not saying to sort of re-understand how we look at how we are a relative to nature in the world. They're framing it within the climate framing. People across the political spectrum are concerned about a top-down authoritarian response to climate change using the COVID-19 response as the blueprint. But there's a palpable longing for healthier, more sustainable ways of living. Okay, so the top-down authoritarian, that is setting up the decentralized distributed ledger technology of Web3. That's pretty clear, okay? And again, response to climate change. But there's, and then longing for sustainable ways of living. Okay, that's the Sustainable Development Goals. That's a hat tip to the UN. These divisions and recriminations are taking place against the backdrop of declining indicators of human health and well-being. Inflation, looming recession, declining life expectancy, and widespread chronic health conditions among adults and children, as toxic chemicals build up in the air, water, soil, food, and industrial products people are exposed to every day. So the well-being metrics, those are for impact investing. And I'm just going to see if I can... sorry, I want to show you this article. I have so many on well-being because it was part of the refugee program. Oh gosh, yeah, this one. Wellness metrics, teaching machines to live with us. And so the well-being metrics go back to the oh, there you go, the Vatican again, right? Remember, Celia was all about, Bobby, you have to go on some more Catholic television stations and tap into your Catholic roots because that's super important. The Vatican is going to be pushing Humanity 2.0. And Richard Layard, he was creating well-being social impact bonds linked to economics. He was with the London School of Economics on the science of happiness. So when you start to see well-being metrics, again, on the surface, it sounds really good. But what happened with Layard is he ended up scaling the NHS mental health system by using pop-up happiness centers and like cognitive behavioral therapy, the kind of thing that you would have in a VR headset. And that's what it's coming, right? So this idea that in the name of wellness, we'll live in mixed reality. We'll live in this mixed reality interface, but it will all be about making us happy and making us better. And it's behaviorist. All of this is behaviorist, and it's built into this tokenization. Again, this is linked to these impact markets where regular people, like social workers, go into people's homes and take pictures with AI vision cameras and start measuring their well-being, data tokens, and DeFi implementation. So when Bobby goes down to the Bitcoin conference and he's talking about well-being metrics and coming up with new models to address chronic illness, it's about the outside-in robot. Even though he's going to say stuff about wellness and people will be like, well, what could be wrong with wellness? I would say if what you're doing is coding a robot for social cues, then that's actually really problematic. Here I have this Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. They had the science and ethics of happiness, caritas, social friendship, and the end of poverty. So it has to be understood also within the Catholic framework. Okay. And yeah, beware the wellness metrics. They're not going to be good. Globally, the most well-known indicator of overall well-being, the Human Development Index, has been going down since 2019. And new research shows the quality of life in the U.S. and most other countries peaked several years before that and has been on a steady decline since. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my Kumu descent map here. And the wellness metrics are the wellness and happiness. Yeah, like the Bhutan Happiness Index. It's linked to Martin Seligman and this sort of positive psychology. section. And let me see, Bhutan. Oh yeah, the Gross National Happiness Experiment in 2008. So this was right around the same time that Bobby was honoring, NRDC was honoring Bloomberg. Otto Scharmer with the Gross National Happiness Lab out of Germany, and it was linked to this Presencing Institute, Global Collective Systems Change in Consciousness, and that, I'm pretty sure, came out of the MIT Sloan Business School, right? So you don't want the war machine programming your authentic happiness. I'm pretty sure none of us want the war machine doing that. But when you see these narratives being spun out, that's what we have going on. And I think we need to be very, very, very cautious. Again, so the big political question is this: can a coalition be built in a divided and suffering population to combat the political and economic nexus, namely the corrupt merger of a state and corporate power that is ruining the health of people and planet and trampling our rights and freedoms in the process? So again, what Web3 is going to do is put that on steroids, right? They're going to say it's decentralized and we can all be entrepreneurs of our own data, our own wellness data. But this transpartisan approach to come together and combat authoritarianism, we will replace top-down authoritarianism with bottom-up authoritarianism. And we will turn everybody into an investment opportunity for global billionaires who are in the Web3 tech space, and many of whom will be at the Bitcoin conference in Miami that Bobby's going to be presenting at, right? So we're just trading systems of authoritarianism. We're going to maybe we'll say we'll push back on the Google version, and we'll have the Mark Andreessen Horowitz version, right? Backed by New America, where we can be decentralized entrepreneurs of our own behavior points. Okay. In fact, there are reasons to hope that the widespread discontent growing among disparate groups on the left and right, who may even think of each other as sworn enemies, can be formed into an effective movement. And I think that is the synthesis, right? They have pitted people, they have created the polarization, and now it's time to bring things back together. Rumblings of discontent with the corporate-dominated climate movement. And again, climate, it's not framed as authentic environmentalism, it's climate because that's the market, can now be heard on the environmental left in the US and around the world. And so, I guess that would kind of count as Corey, right? Like what wrong kind of green? And a lot of people that I used to follow on Twitter. And again, I still hold to my same values, but I don't fall into any particular box. I'm resisting being put into a box because as soon as you choose a box, they start moving you around on the game board. And so what they're saying is the environmental left has discontent with the corporate climate movement, which, yes, true, we should be concerned about it, but we shouldn't be replacing it with a Web3 regenerative economics. U.S. environmental organizations cheered President Biden's signature climate change law, the Inflation Reduction Act, but many environmentalists now realize the law included corporate giveaways worth hundreds of billions of dollars that are not translating into meaningful gains for the planet. And I would say, again, the climate science framing and the limits to growth is the game board for cybernetics. So I'm an environmentalist who believes there are terrible problems with the environment. But I'm highly skeptical of the standard climate science and the limits to growth model because I understand that is actually about pushing us into the metaverse to dematerialize natural life, water, carbon-based natural life for a silicon replica. And so I resist any of the climate framing by right? I think I would rather it actually be considered, let's talk about being good relatives to the environment. And that doesn't involve dropping nano sensors on everything and hooking everything up to a planetary computer so that people can trade in eco tokens. No, not that either. Okay, back to the article. It is also plain to see that corporate elites like Bill Gates are using the climate issue to their advantage. Gates is pushing top-down climate strategies and dubious technologies in which he's heavily invested. Carbon capture, geoengineered, and climate-smart agriculture, which are either unproven or potentially harmful to the environment and human health. So I would say that's on purpose. I think Bill Gates has been uplifted on purpose. And these technologies, they're going to come up with ways of tokenizing what they say are good behaviors, good climate behaviors around permaculture, right? So I like the permaculture model, but at the same time, do I want drones flying over small-scale organic permaculture farms to take pictures to verify for a tokenized impact investor that the farm is doing what they say they're supposed to be doing? Like, I'm not about that, right? So here is where they're setting up the Gates agritech against something that's supposed to look like more like green pill regenerative economics. And a lot of this is linked into Great Barrington and the Schumacher Center that I'm going to talk about. And, you know, ironically, like I was talking about Leland Lehrman, the impact investor, and the community where we had that talk where he's like, hey, Allison, nudge, nudge, like I'm an impact investor. I'm like, well, wait a minute. And at the time, it was literally where we were sitting was probably a half an hour drive from Great Barrington. And all of the Great Barrington Declaration was coming out at the time, I think. I'm pretty sure. And so I'm like, wait a minute, I should go by Great Barrington. Like, it's not that far away. And Great Barrington is also home to the Schumacher, like Commons, New Engineering, Regenerative Finance, Regen Network, and Schumacher Center. Like, Great Barrington is home to both of these and the free market economics. And so you've got all of these things being woven together, and nobody understands enough of the elephant to make sense of any of it. So they just look at like, well, I like permaculture, of course. Yeah, sure. Like, you're going to pay me for keeping my woodlot on blockchain. Like, I'm fine with that. They don't understand the rest of the elephant. So like, it's about creating a digitally twin simulation world and like harvesting our energy into that like disconnected space. So that's why I'm just so emphatic. Like, I'm not here to try to bring down Children's Health Defense or Bobby. I'm trying to bring clarity to what is actually going on, because until we actually get there, we're going to be being managed. We're just being managed. Every single paragraph in this article is us being managed for the next phase. Like Kevin Warbuck says, you know, be the game designer. They've designed this game and they're just expecting us to sleepwalk through it. Okay, so again, it's not just Bill Gates. It's definitely also like Michael Bloomberg, again, who was honored by NRDC. Worse, COVID-19 revealed the rot in a climate movement that stayed silent as big corporations profiteered and governments engineered an unprecedented rollback of civil liberties. Some elements of the climate movement even approved of lockdowns and draconian restrictions on personal behavior as policies to emulate in the future. See COVID emergency as a potential model for a climate emergency. Well, yes, of course, that is what was always planned. Now here, he brings in this guy, Jem Bendell, who formerly with the Extinction Rebellion. Now I will say, and you know, I hope I'm not misremembering this, but like in the summer of 2021, I had someone reach out to me by email who I think was connected with this guy Bendell, and saying, because at the time, again, along with Cory Morningstar, like there weren't a lot of people who were framing the lockdowns and trying to talk about corporate environmentalism. And I was, you know, really emphasizing the impact finance side of things. And the group that was around this guy, Bendell, they were talking about coming up with some sort of video game for young people to like train them in a different way of thinking about stuff. And I'm like, no. You don't want to do it in a game. Like, that's all wrong. And plus, I'm always skeptical of the conversion story. I'm very skeptical of the conversion story. So you too should be skeptical. But let's hear what what Aaron has to say about Jem Bendell. Okay, in a new book, Breaking Together, and think about that as like within a holon, or bringing people together in cells, right, in petri dishes. In Breaking Together, A Freedom-Loving Response to Collapse by Jem Bendell, PhD, professor of sustainability at UK University of Cumbria, highlights many of the failures and missteps of the current environmental movement. The author is a visible presence in the UK environmental movement who helped inspire the growth of Extinction Rebellion, a left-wing climate group generally considered to be radical, or a corporate shill. Like, that's pretty much what it is. In his book, Bendell makes the case that the movement must pull away from big corporations and global elites and reorient itself around the ideal of freedom. Now, again, freedom is agents in the game: choice theory, decision theory, and betting and prediction markets. In the past, Bendell worked with elite institutions, attending meetings at organizations like the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. He was even named a WEF Young Global Leader some years ago. But in Breaking Together, Bendell repudiates these kind of elite institutions and their top-down approach to climate change, right? Because it's supposed to be bottom-up, right? We're supposed to tokenize the commons and then do all our decision theory, like for signaling with our local currency in the market, and it's going to be bottom-up, right? So we're going to get rid of the top-down. We're going to do bottom-up blockchain. He writes that climate concern is being hijacked by a mix of corporate profiteers and authoritarians, so that an ineffective and counterproductive policies are being implemented and thereby generating backlash against any kind of concerted action. Now, I'm just re-emphasizing that this is net zero, like that this is the net zero aspect of this. As a Davos dropout, Bendel writes, I know how their belief in the myth that their power and wealth are an invitation to shape the world makes them susceptible to overlooking the basic rights of ordinary people like us. Bendel was one of the few environmentalists to vigorously criticize COVID policies over the last several years, enduring abuse from his fellow Greens who were fully invested in official narratives. Bendel sees climate policy going down a similar path. The ideas and policy emerging at Davos primarily focus on accessing more public money for private ventures with dubious ecological credentials and creating digital infrastructures for the control of ordinary people. Okay, so public money for private ventures. All right, they're going to flip it, and they're going to have private money for public ventures with impact data, right? And yeah, the digital infrastructure will be coming. And, you know, I think the person who passed this along to me today said, like, Meryl Nass had forwarded it out, and they were like, oh yeah, it's so good that we're going to have climate stuff, but without the data collection. No, the data collection is coming. They're going to lead you to believe that there's no data collection with Web3, but the entire impact finance space is built on tokenized assets and data collection and real time, like automated data collection. So there's no way that the data collection isn't happening. To Bendel, these are not reasons to abandon environmentalism or treat climate concerns as a scam. Okay, so this is an important one. To Bendel, these are not reasons to abandon environmentalism or treat climate concerns as a scam, as many who oppose globalist plans for climate change are eager to do, because they need us on their game board. They need us on their game board. Now that I am a Davos dropout, he writes, I worry about the absence of a globally vocal and organized environmental alternative to their corporate agenda. Now, again, if you understand it as corporate, as, you know, political ideology or public versus corporate, they're all part of it. It's all, the entire thing is part of it, is what I'm saying, is this transition to the noosphere. So you're not going to have a ground up environmental movement tied to impact investing, which is what this guy is talking about. He's talking about creating investment markets for it. It's not going to happen without the data and without the digital infrastructure. So that's not true. Let's see. His proposed solution is to reboot environmentalism into an eco-libertarian movement, okay? Libertarian being key here, because the libertarians have a really important role to play in the free agent gaming that's coming. An eco-libertarian movement that seeks to protect our freedoms and the environment from big corporations, corrupt governments, and Davos elites. Now, I mean, how would that even happen, right? Like, what entities in the world that are enacting policy or providing money for projects are not corporations or governments or the agents of those entities? I mean, are we talking about Mark Andreessen? Like, are we talking about individual wealthy donors? Are we talking about like the David Sentners of the world? Like, who are we talking about here? Without a freedom-loving environmental movement, he says, environmentalists will continue to serve as little more than the anxious idiots of authoritarian power, while big corporate interests continue to degrade the planet and our quality of life continues to be more rubbish in more ways. Now, I would say, too, this aspect of the corporations doing it wrong is the reason there will be the data collection, because all of the Web3 tokenization is linked to this idea of greenwashing, right? The corporations are investing in green things, but they're not good solutions, and they're just doing it to greenwash their profit taking. So we need more data. We need more surveillance. We need more dashboards because the companies are screwing things up. And if we just had more data, everything would be okay. So all of this narrative around the corporate interests degrading the planet and greenwashing is driving the Web3 tokenization. Bendel and his team compiled exhaustive economic and sociological research, breaking together, showing that the quality of life in most countries peaked around 2016. Again, we're going back to well-being metrics. Global quality of life has been steadily declining since then, he contends, due to the breakdown of economic and social support systems, the deterioration of environmental conditions, a long-term process that he calls a kind of slow-moving systemic collapse. He believes only a popular movement that focuses on freeing us from the global corporate elites' failing institutions, policies, and ideologies, while also trying to heal the damage they have caused to the planet, can provide any kind of answer. Bendel's book is an indication there may be a more disaffected left-wing environmentalist out there waiting to be called back to a freedom-loving environmentalism, a version of environmentalism that is not under the thumb of corporate interests and that recognizes political freedom as a universal ideal. And again, I would say look to Children's Health Defense's ties to Texas, to Florida. The libertarian side is going to be really powerful, right? Like the populist. And I mean, it's kind of crazy to me that RFK Jr. is even running as a Democrat because like he's a free market capitalist. In no way does he, like, besides, like, talk about greenwashing, like maybe he has something next to his name that he did environmentalism, but the entire, what he's representing is definitely more libertarian. And so my concern is, like, are he and DeSantis going to team up some time down the road, like on the left-right roadshow? Like, to me, that's very concerning. Okay, let's see. Yeah, freedom-loving environmentalism. And this is, and the sad thing is, like, I've talked to Jason, and he's in Colorado. They have a lot of permaculture type people out there, and they're all about the blockchain, right? They're all, the permaculture people are just chomping down on like the new age, the spiritualism people. Like there is a very strategic reason that almost all of the quote unquote resistance got put onto blockchain by 18 months into lockdown, right? How many people are out there besides the people that I hang out with are talking about the problems of Web3 and blockchain, right? It's, me and Leo and Jason and, Sebs has talked about it and Raul has talked a little bit about it. And, Lynn, we've been trying to get that through to the Texas people. Like for the most part, no one is talking about the problems with blockchain. And that's because it's going to be an integral part of the tokenizing the commons with this sort of right-left unity. Okay, the anti-globalism, anti-lockdown, pro-freedom right, and a positive new approach to the environment. If parts of the environment left can be called to the defense, to the cause of freedom, and remember DOM, Stephen Newcomb's dome, the dome of domination. What about the other sides of the equation? Can the anti-globalism, anti-lockdown, and pro-medical freedom movements, which draw largely from the political right, come to appreciate the importance of a positive new environmental agenda? Well, maybe if they make it an investment opportunity. In these circles, there is some deep skepticism about climate change, but there is also a burgeoning awareness that the same big food, big pharma, big chemical corporations have been unleashing their poorly tested products on us and are poisoning our air and water. See the recent train derailment and toxic spill in Ohio and our food. There is broad recognition that big food corporations and corporate elites like Gates are exploiting climate change to push a range of high-tech industrial solutions like fake meat, insect protein, ultra-processed factory foods, and genetic engineering, which only makes this food system unhealthy and more ecologically damaging. Sustainable farming advocates like Joel Salatin, who lucidly explain the unhealthy and anti-ecological practices of the industrial system, are being taken seriously by people in these movements who prior to COVID-19 might have dismissed such ecological arguments as far-out nonsense. And so this is really important, and this is while Salatin came into it, and also what I think is driving that Texas slim beef guy, is that they're going to tokenize regenerative practice. Why are the Weston Price Foundation people so important? They need to get the organic food systems in. This is why Derek Brose is writing about the food systems as well. They need to scare everyone about the food. And again, I'm not saying the food issue isn't scary, but the scaring people about food will essentially usher in the Trojan horse of like, well, in order to trust your food source, you need to sign up for our crypto-focused food co-op, or you need to have a blockchain system to make sure that your meat isn't been injected with something. And again, it's all advancing the tokenized Web3 technology. Before he died, Ronnie Cummins of the Organic Consumers Association wrote about the emerging political alliance of left and right populists and the potential for both sides to come together in the wake of COVID-19 to oppose unhealthy, unsustainable industrial food systems and support local agroecological regenerative food production. And I would agree with that. Like, I like that idea. We have a community-supported agriculture farm box that we've had for 15 years. I like knowing who grows and we're fortunate because that often does come at a bump in price to be able to actually have a relationship with the people that grow your food. But I like this idea, and I could see the left and right coming together if if this wasn't coming out in short succession to finding out that RFK Jr. is keynoting the Bitcoin conference in Miami, I would feel better about it, right? But the reality is that RFK Jr. is now touting a lot of crypto nonsense. Let me see. I have some of his crypto quotes here. Here we go. This is May 3rd. Cryptocurrencies led by Bitcoin, along with other crypto technologies, are a major innovation engine. It is a mistake for the U.S. government to hobble the industry and drive innovation elsewhere. Biden's proposed 30% tax on cryptocurrency mining is a bad idea. And this is kind of funny. So then he has to go on, yes, energy use is a concern, though somewhat overstated, but Bitcoin mining use is about the same as video games, and no one is calling for a ban on those. The environmental argument is a selective pretext to suppress anything that threatens elite power structures. Some advocate tight control of cryptocurrency to prevent their use by criminals, but it isn't just criminals who want privacy. So do people who want to do, so do dissidents and ordinary citizens. And then he goes on, just as biodiverse ecosystems is a resilient ecosystem, so too will our economy be more resilient if it has a diverse ecology of currencies. This is straight up Bernard Lietaer. We've been talking about the ecology of currencies. This is why Catherine Austin Fitts is on the board, right? She's all about the local economics, right? Again, I know she has issues with blockchain, but this idea of an ecology of currencies is sort of central to what she's been saying, not just a single centralized controlled one. And that's why they've been framing everything as central bank digital currency, because they actually want digital currency. They want a diverse ecosystem of digital currencies to be the signals for this Web3 tokenomics game, right? And so Robert F. Kennedy is right in the middle of all of that. Like they've just flipped him over. And I'm like, I can just see it coming together. Again, Environmental Bobby and Health Freedom Bobby will come together through regenerative Web3 finance and tokenomics, token engineering. And it just makes me so frustrated that other people, because again, you've got almost everybody in the resistance, signed up either for a blockchain media account or accepting crypto or investing in crypto, playing crypto games, whatever. Like they all went for it. Not all, but I would say probably at least 90% or more went for the blockchain, and they're going to have no problem with the stuff that Bobby is pitching. But I would assert that it's not about being in good relationship to the earth. None of it. So we're back to the left-right populist food stuff. Such an alliance, Cummins said, is setting the stage for a new grassroots populist majority that transcends the old boundaries of left, right, and green, liberal and conservative, rural and urban. Since the lockdowns of 2020, many in these governments have come to recognize the dangers of corporate regulatory capture of government agencies, the censorship industrial complex between big tech and government security agencies, and big pharma's takeover of public health agencies like the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, CDC, National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Okay, so all of this takeover, what they're going to propose is that everything go onto blockchain, right? And that's how we're going to have a decentralized, we're going to resist authoritarianism and censorship by going into blockchain. And I have an image of this, but if you look at the speakers, and there are many at this Bitcoin conference that's coming up, Whitney Webb is there. And she gave a presentation to the Children's Health Defense Conference in Tennessee last year, and her focus was on censorship and crypto, like as an antidote for the censorship. And I think too, this is why the censorship aspect, why Children's Health Defense was litigating so hard on censorship. It wasn't just, I don't think, about the organization and its own mission, but it was going to compromise the position of this candidacy, right? To have the censorship. So a lot of money, a lot of litigation money went into the litigation against censorship, which was never a part of its mission. Digital censorship was never part of the mission, although I think they're sort of gradually trying to sort of throw that in. Okay, so then we've got the free market advocates who may not have worried too much about corporate regulatory capture in years past of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, suddenly learned that in 2020, captive government agencies can quickly turn into enemies. People across the political spectrum now recognize the dangerous level of power that corporations yield over bureaucracies. Okay, Jeffrey Tucker of the Brownstone Institute, a free market economist and leading opponent of COVID-19 lockdowns, has said about the shifts in perspective the lockdowns prompted in many. Hardly anyone I know holds exactly the same political and ideological outlook today compared with 5 years ago. The reality of lockdowns and the tremendous social and cultural meltdown that has happened has shifted many perspectives. And I would say that's on purpose. Like, I would say everything that we've lived through for the past 3 years is incrementally moving us in phases towards the ant computer. This was meant to disrupt, reconfigure, use digital social media with metadata tags to group and create digital twins of each other for further manipulation and cognitive domain management, and then steer people into these certain zones. Again, Hegelian dialectic, polarity, synthesis, bringing them together. And so now the left-right populist framing is what I think that RFK Jr. is building on for his candidacy. I could write an entire article on my own shifts. I had no idea, for example, of the raw political power of big tech and big pharma and what a massive threat it represents to rights, liberties, and constitutional government. Now, I would say big pharma, that has to be understood like the authoritarian and the government capture within the context, again, of Web3. Remember, Protocol Labs is advancing pay-for-success finance using blockchain technologies and repurposed drugs. And those repurposed drugs were a big chunk of the front end of the Fauci book. Right? They're framing all of this as using like crowdsourced crypto Web3 infrastructure to advance precision medicine and personalized drugs outside of regulatory structures, outside of regulatory systems. And again, that's being advanced by Steve Kirsch, a billionaire out of MIT who has links to digital identity and search engine engineering, and was housing his foundation, at the beginning, at least with the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, right? And so whenever you see like them framing it as a big tech, big government versus the converse is always the Web3 decentralization. And they already know that big pharma is going to be looking to decentralize and have a more distributed investor and regulatory premise that the current program, which again, I'm not saying that there's not issues with it, but they already have the solution in their back pocket and they're just waiting to get you steered around mentally to accepting it. In the overlap between the left and right versions of the popular revolt against the corrupt merger of state and corporate power, laid bare by glaring abuses, there may be room for unexpected political bedfellows to build a broad-based movement that appeals to significant segments of the electorate. So again, they're bringing people together. They separated people to create these unexpected opportunities. And I think that that's kind of what comes out of complexity theory and emergence, right? You create disruptive innovation, and then hopefully you have things tagged well enough that you can look at how things come back together, and then you can use that for future modeling for future disruptions. And that's when I was doing work in education, one of the key people in disruption was Clayton Christensen, the Harvard Business School professor. Like, he was the central guy for disruption, and he was also a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And his ideas around disruptive innovation were throughout. So you break something up so that you can bring it back together, you can look at it, and you can model it in new ways. Okay, rejection of the COVID-19 model, focus on healthy food and regenerative farming. That's also going to be coming in. A unifying message. In addition to regenerative agriculture, a left-right coalition can agree on the need to reduce chemical and plastic pollution, promote clean air and water, preserve the commons. Again, we've got the commoning, conserve natural resources, and strive for a healthier way of living. And I agree with all of those on the surface, but I don't trust the system because I know that the Web3 people are right back there setting it up. And they need a unified message and to prioritize human health and well-being over corporate profit. And again, that is the next phase, right? That is stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism has the well-being metrics baked into it. It was always that. So this is not this is outside the World Economic Forum. Like, no, it's patently right in the heart of it. This donut economy, the Kate Raworth, the circular economy, I think that's MacArthur woman, and the donut economy and the well-being metrics are all part of that. It's not about making money. It's not just about money. It's about controlling people through digital identity as agents in a game. Okay. And then at the end, an ironclad protection of human rights and civil liberties. And again, human rights as what? An agent in the game, right? Human rights as agents in the game. A population stripped of civil liberties in the name of an emergency, whether pandemic or climate, is a sitting duck for abuse by the powerful. It is the giant multinational corporations, their captured government agencies, their crony politicians who must have their freedom to impose their will on the population taken away, not the other way around. So again, making the case all the way around for decentralization. And in the decentralization, and it's going to be resilient, like there will be no one to deal with. Like you won't be able to address any of the problems because there won't, it is totally decentralized. Like you'll be caught up in these behaviorist token programming ideologies, and you can't hold anyone accountable because it's everything and nothing all at once. So, here it says, W. Aaron Van Diver is a writer, former litigator, and wildlife conservationist, and the author of a novel Under a Poacher's Moon. I don't know if he's done any other articles for... Oh, look, he's done some other articles here. I guess U.S. sells drilling rights to 16 million acres in the Gulf, spike in whale and dolphin deaths. Would a climate emergency open the door to authoritarian governance? World War on COVID, arsenal of high-tech weapons of social control. Okay, so that's Aaron. So, I hope that you can sort of see the framing here. I'll touch here on, the stuff about, here we have Children's Health Defense, promoting on their donor page cryptocurrency via InGiven. Underneath is donor advised funds, complete anonymity, right? Because they don't want people to know who's giving them money. Here we have an article from April 11th. U.S. presidential candidate RFK Jr. says Bitcoin provides an escape route from financial turmoil. Okay, so he's aligning clearly with the Bitcoin people. This is an article from May 6th. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to make campaign debut at Bitcoin conference. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s first appearance as a presidential candidate will be at a cryptocurrency conference in Miami later this month. And they're trying to, again, put together Climate Bobby with the Health Freedom Bobby, because the Climate Bobby, like Bitcoin, is clearly still does have an energy impact, even with the shift towards staking. It says in this article, Kennedy has positioned himself as one of the nation's most prominent political champions of cryptocurrency. But people aren't talking about Web3. And I would just point out, at this same conference, the Bitcoin Miami conference in 2014, that was when Vitalik Buterin revealed the Ethereum paper. I think he had developed it the year before, but my concern has always been the smart contract layer, the protocol layer, right? That's the cybernetic game board. And so this is the same idea. The same conference is where sort of the public debut of the smart contract layer. And so we've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's the first one listed on the speakers page with a big photo. Next to him is Michael Lewis, who was an author who wrote The Big Short and Moneyball. And then Michael Saylor, who is the executive chairman of MicroStrategy. And I think one of Leo's first articles was sort of a deep dive into Michael Saylor and in MicroStrategy. So the Moneyball book by Michael Lewis, it was very impactful around outcomes-based government contracting. And there was a whole program that was put out by Bloomberg Philanthropies. Again, Natural Resources Defense Council had close ties to Bloomberg as the climate guy. Results for America is a Bloomberg program, and they were promoting Moneyball government. So, and this is from 2017. So I have had Moneyball government on my radar for a really long time. I did a whole talk on it in this May of 2019. So wow, going on 4 years ago, Moneyball for government, poverty mining in Philadelphia. And at the Wooden Shoe Anarchist bookstore, and talking about all of this. And at the time there was a big pushback going on around affordable housing and the corrupt Philadelphia Housing Authority, and those were people who were organizing with me. We did a picketing event, or I did on May Day outside of that. And this was the presentation, Moneyball for Government. And this is one of the slides. You can see Moneyball for Government and these various governors that were lined up to be on board. And it was all about impact data metrics. And our former mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter, when he left being mayor of Philadelphia, he went up to go work for Bloomberg and sell What Works government to all these mid-sized cities. I don't know if you can see all over the country, but these were all What Works government cities. What Works certification tied in with the Moneyball government program. So to me, it's quite significant to have Lewis standing there next to, in the photograph next to Bobby. And this is Leo's article from 2 years ago on Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, and the connections between data analytics, like homeland security, government, military interests, and that MicroStrategy is one of the largest holders of Bitcoin. 2 years ago, it said, I'm trying to see, it said that they had, MicroStrategy had 114,000 Bitcoin valued at the time, $5.5 billion. So a major influencer in that space. And in addition, we've got, among the other speakers, Tulsi Gabbard, she's been showing up a lot about the whole, peace movement. And then we've got Eric Weinstein, and, I've shown images before of him and, working on, he's the mathematician, the Manhattan Project, connecting, econophysics, social physics, and biophysics. That was this presentation in 2009 in Canada, a Manhattan Project for economics on Homo selectus. So again, that's the evolutionary economic side of things. We had Adam Back of Blockstream, and Blockstream is the smart contract layer for Bitcoin. Stacy Herbert, and she and Max Kaiser were the main people connected in El Salvador, pushing Bitcoin adoption there. Cynthia Loomis is a senator, I think Wyoming, and Wyoming was doing a lot of the early legislation in connection with Cardano. So these folks are here, and so I'll just show you Stacy Herbert. The reason I did that giant descent map was actually I saw a video that had Stacy Herbert in it, and Max Kaiser, I guess, was in the audience. And in it, she was talking about blockchain and how the benefits of blockchain weren't so much about money, but all the other things they could do, which are the smart contracts. So I'm going to play this video for you. So we can watch it, and the sound quality isn't great, and I apologize for that, but I'm just going to play it so we can listen, because I think she and Max Kaiser were set up as like the ugly Americans for forcing Bitcoin on El Salvador, which is true, and it wasn't good. But here she's saying that it's not really about the money, it's about all of the other things, which would be the cybernetic blockchain governance. So let me pull that up.
In Bitcoin is not so much about the currency aspect of it, but the economic institution aspect of the blockchain.
So she said currency is not so much about the currency aspect. Let me just play that again.
Much about the currency aspect of it, but the economic institution aspect of the blockchain.
So not so much about the currency aspect, but about the economic aspect, the blockchain. So I think that is really important. I'm not going to play the whole thing because the sound quality isn't great, but her saying that, hey, guess what? Like, it's not about the money, it's about the governance, and that is the cybernetics. And so that is really important to understand. Here's I have an image of Blockstream, the Blockstream guy. It's all the smart contracts for financial products and everything else. And then we also have Max Kaiser, who is Stacy Herbert's other half, and we have Natalie Smolenski. So I don't know, Lynn Davenport, if you're out there, Lynn and I ate some barbecue with Natalie Smolenski at the Texas Bitcoin fundraiser. We tried to get her ear and tell her about impact investing. She was chair of the Blockchain Council in Texas, and the key person behind Learning Economy Foundation, and later, it later got sold out to another organization, but they lost the contract in Dallas to Greenlight for the mastery transcripts, but really looking at the blockchain learning credentialing system. And she came out of MIT. She's evidently there on behalf of the Texas Bitcoin Foundation and a senior fellow with the Bitcoin Policy Institute. So again, it covers other things. And this was the conference where we saw Natalie when we were picketing in Austin, and then this towards the end there, we've got Whitney Webb, founder and contributing editor from Unlimited Hangout. And so I don't know what she's talking about, but it would not surprise me if she was talking about censoring of journalists, and that crypto and blockchain programs are the answer for all those things. So I think it's really important that we understand this environmental article within the context of Bobby pivoting into being the crypto candidate right now. And so these are some other things. So again, when we're talking about left-right synthesis, this thing from Caitlin Johnstone is just capitalist solidarity. It's one of many ways. Like she's still stoking the the polarity, right? But the thing that's coming next is to bring it together, and to bring it together around a populist uprising around the commons. And Lynn and I have talked about this before, the Tokens Commons Foundation. This is connected to John Clippinger of MIT. They were formerly the ID3 organization working on digital identity. And now they've melded with something called Switch, SWYTCH, about energy circuits. And, I've been talking about this in relationship, the energy, to RFK Jr.'s past discussion of us all being free market energy entrepreneurs of ourselves in our homes. That was in 2012 in Texas. He gave that talk. So the energy economics is super important. And so there we've got Clippinger over here and the Token Commons Foundation over here. I might pop into this map and poke around a little bit. Okay. Oops, it always jumps in. Clippinger. Okay. So again, for those who are not that familiar, so Clippinger was at MIT. He was working with Sandy Pentland in the Human Dynamics Lab. His big project for many years was this ID3 Institute for Institutional Innovation and Data-Driven Design. That's a mouthful, ID3. It's important to note he was an advisor to the Aspen Institute, because we're going to talk about the Aspen Institute a little later, as well as the Highlands Forum, which is a military organization in California, and the Santa Fe Institute, which is complexity theory in New Mexico. And so he and Sandy Pentland, who were the social physics guy, were working on this open mustard seed platform in 2013, open data stores and trusted compute cells and human dynamics, putting all of our human and social dynamics into the machine. And Clippinger co-edited a book with this guy, David Bollier, I don't know, Bollier, and his focus is on the commons and sociocracy. And they were co-authors of a book, they co-edited a book called From Bitcoin to Burning Man, which is available on archive.org. And it was written in 2014 about this decentralized commons. And so I would say, once you understand the framing of, and again, this is 10 years ago almost, of what was coming. They were writing it 10 years ago, right? None of this happens quickly. It's a very slow burn, and they know exactly where they're taking us. And I would say that the guy who wrote this article, Aaron Van Diver, he lives a half an hour, maybe 20 minutes from Aspen, Colorado, which is the home of the Aspen Institute. So I feel like this is all very intentional. And one of the chapters there was this Jonathan Ledgard, which Leo has talked about, the guy who wants to give digital wallets to animals so we can all play in the game together and do payments to one another. Peter Hirschberg, who was working with the UN Global Pulse on sensible cities. This guy, Irving Wiladowski-Berger, who was at MIT, IBM, MIT, Citigroup, MasterCard, and an advisor with Department of Energy Labs. And Jeremy Pitt, that I've covered Jeremy Pitt a lot of time, often about the cyber-physical and socio-technical systems and complexity theory. And then I'm pretty sure... trying to see what other I thought there was one more person. Peter Hirschberg, Michael Osterling. No, it's not her. I thought it was the Holon person, but I'm not. Maybe I'm missing. Oh yes, Michaela Ulyaru, the Romanian scientist working on distributed intelligence systems and self-organizing systems, blockchain, and connected to Cardano, input, output, Hong Kong, and blockchain. She wrote a chapter on holonic systems for them. So Clippinger, who developed the Token Commons Foundation, and Bollier, who is later landed at the Schumacher Center, they're really important. So we've got David Bollier, and then connected to this, there was an interview, a podcast and collaborator between Clippinger and this Regen Network, ecological assets for a refi economy in Great Barrington. So remember, we've got Great Barrington, we've got the Great Barrington Declaration, we've got the Schumacher Center for community community development, and Bollier is there, and then we've got the regen network of ecological assets, so blockchain assets, and then we have people talking about weirdly like putting free markets in the commons. And that might not seem to make sense within any sort of traditional political or economic construct, but it makes a lot of sense if you understand like the post-law, Moore's law, biohybrid computer, the ant computer, the decision theory and the independent agents in the game making decisions that in front of a machine that the machine can witness to develop its own ideas about pattern recognition is very important. So I wanted to poke around a little bit on Clippinger here. I'll go down to this part. So Bernard Lietaer, here you can see him. I made this whole map literally because I saw Stacey Herbert saying like, oh my gosh, it's not really so much about the currency part, it's about the economic construct and blockchain. It's about the cybernetic economics. Lietaer, he developed the euro, and it was advancing this idea of complementary currency for sustainability and promoting the idea of an ecology of money, of diverse currencies. So, oh shoot, let me go back. Oh darn, I guess I went to the wrong thing. Wait a minute, this is the descent map. Oh, I can go back. Oh goodness, here. Let me just go back to my Kumu, and I didn't realize if I clicked through the link, they were going to throw me in another map, the Camelot corner. So I just want to, when we're talking about Lietaer, I want to revisit this thing that Bobby says, right? Just as a biodiverse ecosystem is a resilient ecosystem, so too will our economy be more resilient if it has a diverse ecology of currencies, not just a single centrally controlled one. That's Lietaer. Like, and no offense, but like, I don't think that he's super, I mean, I'm sure he's a bright guy, but these are not his words. Somebody gave him these words. And these words are the words, essentially, is Lietaer coming back from the dead to speak them. And I think, I would be curious, like, people who follow Catherine Austin Fitts, like how she is following all of this, because my understanding is that she's like on the board or maybe the head of the board of Children's Health Defense Europe. And I know that she's been pretty specific about being wary about blockchain and the crypto, and but she also toes the line pretty close to Bobby and the Children's Health Defense junket. So now that Bobby's pivoting into crypto, like, is she going to change her community currency ideas to go along with the digital ecology of money? Like, that would be really interesting to see, because as far as I can tell in how the narrative is playing out, they need someone like her to emphasize the local currency. And this came through something. So here we've got the Schumacher Center for New Economics. It goes back a ways, 1980, right? And it was named after E.F. Schumacher, who was talking about, like, small is beautiful, which I always thought was a beautiful phrase, but he was promoting the use of appropriate technology in connection to Buddhist economics and Catholic mysticism. And so knowing, like, what we know now about Teilhard de Chardin and the noosphere, thinking about cybernetic digital money systems that might be considered appropriate technology by some, advancing mindfulness and mysticism in a biohybrid computer, I think that's kind of interesting to look at. And so the Schumacher Center is important. And the idea of a multi-currency system, a resilient system, this comes straight out of Will Ruddick's work that Leo has been doing, looking at Serafu. Now, remember, Will Ruddick, his training was in high energy physics. He was like all but dissertation from UC Boulder, I think, in high energy physics. And then he went into studying community currency, right? And so clearly that's cybernetics, right? So he was a fellow with the B Protocol Bancor people for a while. And I will say, the key person behind B Protocol was Galila Benartzi, and, who is based in Tel Aviv, but she grew up in Palo Alto. And I would say, the thing about the Centners is they also have a lot of connections to Israel. And they're also connected to technology and finance. So, I sort of, it's not beyond the understanding that they would know exactly how all of this puts together. And again, the centers are based in Miami, where the crypto conference is being held. So Ruddick was working on a multi-currency village market simulation, connecting with social physics and the velocity of money. And so I think they're going to use the money, these local diverse money systems towards an emergent behavior. I feel like that's where things are going. Okay, so just back to, here's the, I've got to go back to the environmental. Okay, so here's the environmental stuff again. Okay, so then we've got, here we have David Bollier, the commons, right? What's coming next is the commons. We're not doing crony capitalism. We're not doing top-down authoritarianism. We're doing bottom-up commons, guys. What's the problem? Like, you can't imagine there'd be any problem with any of this, right? And here's the book. There's a link to it if you want to look it up. Bitcoin to Burning Man and Beyond. Clippinger and Bollier were the co-authors. And interestingly enough, it was, I guess, published with Off the Common Books in Amherst. Now, the University of Massachusetts Amherst is a highly, highly militarized university, also involved in a lot of nanotechnology. And also, I'm pretty sure happens to be the home base of the sociocracy people, which will be the consensus, like token-based consensus and futarchy voting. So it's interesting to me that it was published in Amherst. And here we've got Bollier again, a webinar on sociocracy and the commons. And again, we have to understand commons as the game board. We've got the Regen Network. The Regen Network is based in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. And I don't know exactly when it started. I think it's pretty recent development. But they're looking at catalyzing climate finance. And again, remember in that article, it wasn't let's revisit in the aftermath of the authoritarianism, what does climate science mean and what could the motivations be? It's like, no. That's off the table. We're totally accepting that. But how can we bring right-left populists together around climate science, right? And it's because they're building these markets in climate finance. But, here's a cutie patootie, collage here where they've got a mountain scene and a river and a sunrise and some, clouds and a falcon. I guess maybe, Bobby would like that with the falcon stuff. The climate finance is a juggernaut that's just coming out. Reverse climate change by investing in ecological regeneration projects. The Regen Registry helps communities develop methodologies to verify ecological credits, including carbon and biodiversity. So all of this is straight up digital surveillance from the satellite systems. And this is something that Leo has covered in great detail in his articles over at Silicon Icarus. And so this Regen networks of ecological credits, the investment markets run on tokens. You can't run these markets without the tokens and the data surveillance. It's impossible. So if they're talking about somehow you see people saying like, oh, we're gonna do this, but we're gonna do it beyond the reach of big data, big government and big tech. Well, you're not going to be doing it without any technology because it doesn't work that way. Sorry, let me just take a sip. Okay, so I titled this like Green Pill. Green Pill, Kevin Iwaki he's also based in Colorado, which is interesting. And he's the guy who's tasked with promoting more like environmentally conscious progressive ideologies within the crypto blockchain space. And so he has a podcast called the Green Pill Podcast. And here is with this guy, Gregory Landua, who is with Regen, right? And so this idea of coming up with a palatable free market economics for environmentalists. Okay, we've got the NF Tree, the tokenized tree program. This is what the surveillance is going to look like. And I'll just sort of jump through. Let me see.
Say I want to donate to the Defensores del Chaco project, which is in Paraguay.
You see the satellites.
I can choose to fund this project, and as a receipt, I get an NF tree. This is the NF trees you get.
So this is what this non-authoritarian grassroots commons-based tokenization looks like, is that you're investing in climate stuff in villages and this satellite is staring at the tree all the time and you get an NF tree in your wallet that will have different levels of vitality. So these are the views of the satellite of these lands. Some of the NFTs, you can get videos of animals in the bush, but they're talking about, let me see, this drones are spying on the villages. And this is what people are not telling you about this green pill regenerative finance, is that it's all based on digital surveillance.
Of care. As you can see, this is again the recent drone images and project funding history to make it as transparent as possible.
So it's transparent because the drones are spying on the people in the villages in the rainforest. I mean, this is important to notice. So when you do your regenerative permaculture, there's going to be satellite surveillance spying on you to verify your stuff for your investors. Like, that's how it works. And then, eventually, everything is put online on the blockchain, again, for these quote unquote free market investments. And if somehow you think that the Mark Andreessens of the world aren't going to outgame you in this game of regenerative finance, like, I think you're wrong about that, because we don't understand how these games are being played. This is Leo's article about natural asset managers on decentralized ledger technologies. I highly recommend reading it. It came out a couple months ago. I think he has more stuff in the loop, so stay tuned. This is a whole, Jason, Leo, and I did a whole 2-part program on public goods finance, because a lot of this will be framed as public goods, right? We're not doing big pharma. We're not doing big tech. We're not doing corrupt crony government. We're not doing crony capitalism. We're doing something else. Well, the something else is going to be called Web3 public goods. And it's all going to be run on the smart Web3 blockchain protocol system, but it's all based in surveillance. So if you want, you can go back and listen to this. The Regen Network that is doing this permaculture in Great Barrington, look, they have their own community dollar system, and they have Humanity Cash. So this is where these ecology tokens are coming online. So the Regen Network is part of that. And Humanity Cash. So we've got Bollier at the Schumacher Center, also Great Barrington. He is the Commons Program Director. Again, so keep your ears open for the Commons. Here is Schumacher marketing local currencies. Again, that those are going to be digital, and those are going to be digital signals. And this is just me, this is back in October of 2020 when I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, like this Great Barrington stuff. This is free market economics promoting like people who are coming out of the scientific community for something that's not even the solution that we need. And I couldn't quite understand, it was a free market think tank. It was based at this American Institute of Economic Research, a free market think tank in a Berkshire estate, and it was such a big deal, right? And I was like, well, free market principles are not going to bring about a more just society or restore small businesses or local control. It's going to further concentrate wealth in the hands of the Davos crowd and bring a new era of digital chattel slavery. And that's true. So you need to understand that there is no free market. The free market is the tokenized protocol. And here we've got the American Institute for Economic Research. And look at that. Does that speak grassroots to you? Like, no, that looks like rich elite people making plans for the next game. And people there were like 9,000 signatures or something on that thing. Again, this is how the AIER describes their mission, American Institute for Economic Research. It educates people on the value of personal freedom, free enterprise, property rights, limited government, and sound money. That's the cybernetic game. Personal freedom is your freedom to be an agent on their game board. Free enterprise is you can make decisions that are allowable within the Web3 choice architecture. Property rights, everything will be tokenized as a soulbound token or an NFT. And then limited government, the only government won't be a voted elected government, it will be a machine government on Web3. And then sound money. And the sound money will be all of the tokens trading back and forth in the social economics. And everything will be turned into a token to be traded. And that's for advancing peace. Remember, I keep talking about peace is not what we think. Prosperity and human progress. And I would say that the human progress is towards that we are part of the noosphere. So here's Van Diver. It says he lives in the Roaring Fork Valley of Colorado. With his wife and 2 kids and their dogs that they love because they always like dogs. Remember, Colorado is one of the key blockchain states, digital government states. It turns out that he is affiliated with this organization called Wild Eyes, which is based in Aspen. founded by this person, either Eli or Ellie. It's a woman, so maybe it's Ellie Weiss, 20 years ago, working on conserving wildlife. And again, there's a lot of issues around the conservation, the Western conservation model imposed on Africans. African is a big place that's being focused on being boosted into this new digital economy. So I think they live in Carbondale. Yeah, I think they live in Carbondale, the author and his wife. The owner of this program lives in Woody Creek, Wild Eyes, and it's actually the address of Wild Eyes is in Aspen. So it's about an hour drive between Carbondale and Aspen. But I think we need to understand it within the context of the Aspen construct. And then you see Snowmass, a Snowmass village. Later on, we'll talk about the Eisners a little bit, and the Eisners had an estate in Snowmass. So it's sort of all in the same neighborhood, so to speak. Eli or Ellie Weiss is, she has a podcast. She has, was involved in this wildlife foundation since 1998. It's interesting. I looked up this foundation. It doesn't have a lot of money, $100,000 a year on the books. But it's talking about the importance of culturally and ecologically appropriate solutions. And I think that the culture is really important here. Again, that sounds really good, but we have to understand that what AI most wants next is to tokenize culture. So they want to transmit culture as a token to be put into the pattern seeking system. And so these sustainable income opportunities that this organization is talking about and the application of appropriate technologies, I can see them tokenizing aspects of the culture of the global South by Western interests to create revenue streams for conservation. So I think that has to be understood as behind the scenes. I was a little weirded out when I looked at this press release. It's actually from 2011 about this Wild Eyes Foundation, and they were talking about how to condition lions to not eat the cattle, because I guess that was a problem and people were killing the lions because they were eating the cattle. But they did this really strange thing about baiting the lions with meat treated with pharmaceuticals so that they would have this aversion effect and not eat the cattle. And to me, that just felt really intrusive and invasive, this idea that you would kind of semi-poison the lions so that the cattle people could be comfortable with the lions being around. I mean, I don't know how well that worked, but I feel like that just doesn't seem like a good solution. That doesn't seem like the environmental kind of solution we would want. This is their tax return. The most recent that's on file is 2018, so it's pretty out of date. But you can see the contributions are $365,000. Again, I mean, not shabby, not tiny, but certainly not a Children's Health Defense size. But in 2018, they didn't have any paid staff. It's just a few trustees and her. It seems like sort of like a one-person operation. I do want to point out, if you haven't seen this, I just posted this a couple days ago. It's a guest post by Verity Hound, who was looking into NFTs and spiritual practice. There was this crazy webinar that was going on about Ascension, sponsored by Deloitte. And so Verity Hound sort of unpacked all the different, maybe not every single one, but some of the key players behind this spiritual ascension program, funded by Deloitte, and it actually included creating NFTs through this thing called Quantum Temple, where they were creating NFTs for culture and then auctioning them, and they were based on Ethereum. So really, let me see. I'll click through this because I found it unsettling. So Path to Alongo, the Genesis Cultural Heritage NFT collection, and digital artwork, culture keepers, betting on auctions to quote unquote preserve culture in the blockchain. And I talked a little bit about this before when I was talking about Brazil, the creative economy, right? Collecting your wallet, completing a profile. You can buy some of these different kinds of cultural experiences. Again, not the real experience, but you're just putting money into I guess you're paying for video clips, these NFT video clips where the proceeds support the programs. But again, I wonder to what extent, how it disrupts the spirituality to have these really sacred items commodified like this way. It doesn't feel right to me. I don't know about you, but I would encourage you to check out that that article. So in Aspen, one of the key players here, there, I've been tracking the Aspen Institute forever. Like anybody who's aware of neoliberalism knows what the Aspen Institute is about. Here's a listing where they're promoting financial security. Here's one where they're promoting impact investing. Here's one where they're promoting ESG finance. Here's one where they're talking about a new kind of capitalism, which is clearly the red, blue, left, right, populist side. And again, the reason I'm pointing all of this out is that this author who wrote the article where they're like, Children's Health Defense, like we need this new kind of regenerative finance paradigm, is that he this wildlife organization that he's affiliated with is based in Aspen. And I don't think really anything happens in Aspen like that's beyond the reach of the Aspen Institute. So I was really interested to find out that Mary Holland, that when I was looking at her bio on the Children's Health Defense website, it notes that in addition to teaching courses at Columbia Law School, that she has also served as a consultant to the Aspen Institute Justice and Society program, right? And I've met Mary personally. We've exchanged emails. I'm very emphatic about my concerns about impact finance. So to see that Mary here has served as a consultant to the Aspen Institute, and that's on many of her bios, but including the one right here on Children's Health Defense, it says something, right, that you would be aligned with what the Aspen Institute is about. And a lot of this information in Little Sis I put in myself, but it has groups in Homeland Security, future of work, community solutions, nonprofit sector research funds, roundtables on community change, business and society, social, emotional, academic development, like every single problematic thing that we're looking at, Aspen Institute is involved there. And then let's see who's funding them. So it's kind of fascinating that Aspen Institute actually has a list of donors. Surprise, surprise, because some people don't feel like they need to list any donors, but they do. And so the 2021 contributions include of $1 million. So this is just the category of $1 million in 1 year or more. Jacqueline and Miguel Bezos, so that's Jeff Bezos' parents. Bloomberg Philanthropies, Climate Works, Bill and Melinda Gates, William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan Chase, WK Kellogg, MasterCard Impact Fund, USAID, U.S. Department of State, and the Walton Family Foundation. So many, many people. Now, I think we have to consider that Gates was the character that will be sacrificed to advance the tokenized commons, right? Just like Google and Amazon and some of these other ones, you've got the big, scary tech people, which I'm not saying that they're not scary, but they were always meant to be sacrificed moving in the direction of the tokenized commons. So further down the list, this is also for 2021, gifts of $100,000 or more included Jane and Michael Eisner. Now, Michael Eisner was the former head of Disney. And the Eisner Foundation, he has his own foundation that has a close connection to the Aspen Institute working on art programming. And then additionally, they also have a pediatric health center in Los Angeles. Okay, community health. So we know community health is going to be tied into a lot of the impact markets. So we've got the Eisners on the thing, and then I'm going to draw your attention. So Eisner has children who are involved in his foundation, and the children are married, and one of the wives her name is Tarina Eisner, and it says that Anders' wife Tarina also plays a key role as an advisor to the Eisner Foundation. Well, so here we have Tarina Thine, maybe is her maiden name, Tarina Thine of Los Angeles, daughter of Tom and Pat Thine of Fort Morgan, was united in marriage to Anders Eisner, son of Michael and Jane Eisner of Los Angeles. And the ceremony was at the Snowmass property in Colorado. So like beautiful, cloudy, mountainous background there, lovely couple. And so Tarina Eisner is on the board of Children's Health Defense. She's actually one of the longest standing board members. She joined in 2016. At the time, the organization was called the World Mercury Project. See, she's right there under Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tarina Eisner. And she's still on the board. We'll look at So now this is 2021, so it's called Children's Health Defense. Here she is. She's board member number 15 on their 990, Tarina Eisner. So most of the board for Children's Health Defense changes over like every 1 or 2 years. So it's important to know that she was one of the longest standing board members. And I find it really interesting that if you go to the board of directors page on Children's Health Defense, there's only 4 people listed, right? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, no. Oh, this person just came on, Deirdre Imus. That's really interesting. She was not there this morning. This morning it was only 4. So Robert, Mary, Brian Hooker, who happened to also be a bioengineer who worked for the Department of Energy, Sheila Ely, sorry, I misspoke. I think I said Stacy. Sheila Ely, and Deirdre Imus, and she's a new addition, I think, as of this morning. So that's interesting. I'll have to get back to that. She's got a lot more information on her. But yeah, so Tarina Eisner is not there, and I don't know. Are they concerned that people might know that the Eisners are connected to Children's Health Defense? Again, here is the board list that I have, and the started and ending dates. There have been a lot of board members added in the last couple years, but they're not visible on the website. So here we have just the background on Michael Eisner, the former chairman and CEO of Walt Disney from 1984 to 2005. So I'm sure it's a pretty good gig. I'm sure you can buy a really nice estate in Colorado for that. And the Eisners, when I went to the library for the Foundation Directory online, if you have a place you can access this, it's a good resource. The Eisner Foundation has made 3 grants to Children's Health Defense, I think in a total of $30,000, which all things considered is not a ton of money. Considering how much they have access to. But, I will say just in terms of tons of money, we were talking about the GuideStar stuff and this idea of promoting the donor advised funds. Again, this is a real problem for me. They're literally saying to be anonymous, go through these donor advised funds. And here is, we're going to have a short list of organizations that we work with. And this is a quote from the website. When you recommend a grant, meaning you instruct the DAF, Donor Advised Fund, to send us a donation, you can select in case of Fidelity and Vanguard, or request in the case of National Philanthropic to remain anonymous. Look for how would you like to be recognized and select anonymous if you wish. When you do this, no one outside the fund manager will be able to trace the grant back to you. All right. And I will just point out in closing today that when we were looking at these Greater Horizons, this is from 2020. In 2020, this Greater Horizons Community Foundation in Kansas City, it has the gross receipts are $1 trillion. And this is a problem. This is a problem with the entire nonprofit industrial structure that I'm saying, is that that this system is taking in, so it's giving in 2020 it gave out $445 million plus in grants, untraceable. 445. And again, Children's Health Defense wants to talk about capture and corporate capture. This is how it happens. They're literally trying to promote the very same systems that allow the capture to happen, right? And again, they're not the only ones doing it, for sure. Somebody's getting that $445 million that is untraceable. What does that mean when essentially the impact finance world is going to run on these kind of grants, right? Impact grants. So this is the grant itself. I know it's kind of small. You can see, so Children's Health Defense, look, and this is page 86 of 106. So look how many grants are on this page, times 106 grants. How many people are getting that money? Children's Health Defense, at that point, the address was still in Georgia, Peachtree City, $586,000 in 2020. So let me just go back. Children's Health Defense, Peachtree Parkway, Peachtree City, Environment, $586,000. Do we not have a chance to know who made that gift? We won't have any idea. And then the next year, I guess maybe they had less to work with. The next year, this is 2021, 136 pages. We have Children's Health Defense, 126,800. So, I'm just going to say that this, I have a lot of problems with how this stuff is being managed. And if everyone wants to say it's no big deal, well, it wasn't a big deal till he decided to run for president, right? And I feel like when he decides to run for president and he has people on his board who are, specifically working on things like, let me see, how do I get this? David Sentner, like erasereputation.com, right? When you have someone like that, then that becomes an issue. I think that we need to, we need to wonder. You're talking about hiding money. You're hiring people from the pharmaceutical industry and then trying to scrub it off the internet. And the other thing that I didn't get around to saying, I don't know, where did this piece go? Just a second. Oh gosh. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna look this up because this is an important one to end on. Somebody and I don't find all this stuff, but again, I'm willing to say it out loud. Oh no, not decent. Camelot. Okay. Okay. So, why should we be skeptical? All right. So someone forwarded this to me. This was an article, July 19th, 2022. Republican AG, that's Attorney General, pay-to-play group raises $4.9 million in the second quarter. Okay. Now, I'm sure that this is probably a certain politically exposed by CMD, Center for Media and Democracy. So I'm sure that this has a axe to grind around Republicans. And so I'm not necessarily saying that, but the facts are the facts. So this person has this article that the Republican Attorney General group accepts another illegal donation. And I'm just going to read this out loud. In February, Popular Info reported that RAGA, the Republican Attorney General group, accepted an illegal donation of $50,000 from Children's Health Defense, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s anti-vax propaganda outfit. According to IRS rules, a Section 501c3 organization may not make a contribution to a political organization described in 527, such as candidate committee, political party committee, or political action committee. As a 501c3 nonprofit, Children's Health Defense admitted the donation was illegal, but claimed that, quote, they paid $50,000 to get access to the Republican Attorney General to brief them on health policy issues. All right. And then underneath it says their latest filing shows they received an illegal donation of $300 from the Philanthropy Roundtable, chaired by the Bradley Foundation. And I think Philanthropy Roundtable, so it's just not good. It's not a good look, guys. It's just really not a good look. Anyway, I think that's it for today. It seems like the chat has been killed somehow, but I hope you appreciated this. I have a lot more to say in my overview here, and I think it matters. If people want to tell me that it's not time to talk about impact finance because we don't understand it, I'm not buying it anymore, because essentially we've got people talking about populist environmental movements that will be Web3 tokenomics, and it's the train is moving, it's full steam ahead. So get up to speed. And I'm not here to be mean to people, but we actually have to take responsibility for our own education. And I'll put the link to this in the comments afterwards, so you can do your own poking around. And if you have something that you feel fits in, again, I'm not trying to be ad hominem. I'm not. There are many things out there that are around RFK Jr. and the Kennedy family's history that are very sensitive, that I don't think are particularly relevant. And I have an empathy for someone being born into that family, because there's a lot of baggage that goes with that. I'm not going there. That's not the place that I'm going with. But I will talk about the finance, and I will talk about blockchain. I will talk about the interests that are connected to that, which include the crypto and include the Vatican. And I will continue to interrogate this idea of Children's Health Defense as a media outlet that is making bad decisions about illegal donations, because he's a lawyer. He should know better than that. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, everybody.